Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the December 16th, 2025 meeting of the Town of Chatham Select Board. Please note this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, including the use of AI note-taking apps, please notify the chair. Seeing none. Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 28, 2025 signing of Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 20, until June 30th, 2027, this meeting of the Chatham Select Board is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410, conference ID 203-386-491#, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Chatham TV, Xfinity Channel 10772, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. First item of business is to establish a quorum. Ms. Davis.
Present.
Mr. Dykens.
Present.
Mr. Metters.
Present.
Mr. Smith.
Present.
And the chair is present. We'll first take up approval of minutes of two meetings. First, November 25th, 2025. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? Any corrections? Hearing none, we'll call the roll. Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, 5-0. Next, the minutes of the meeting of December 2nd, 2025. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
And a second.
In a second. Any corrections? The chair has a couple. On page 4, middle paragraph, which begins "the board discussed." In the last line, right in the middle, I think the word should read regulatory changes, not regulator. There's a Y missing.
Yep.
And then on this next page, page 5, very last paragraph, second line, again in the middle, after the word shelter, regional shelter, I think the words option fail should be added. Should the regional shelter option fail? With that, I'll call the roll. Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you. Public announcements and agenda item requests. Any from the board? Mr. Dykens.
Thank you, Dean. I just don't want to lose track of the letter that Graham Milley wrote regarding the transfer to commercial haulers and some concern about the affidavit. So I think we may have it adjudicated before the end of the month, but we know we need to do something, I think, to clear it up before the first of the year. So I would like to have a placeholder there.
Yes, we'll do that. I know we have a staff meeting that I requested scheduled, and I invited you today.
Yes, yep. Good.
Next week, and we'll see what we can resolve there. And if we can't, we'll have to bring it before the board.
Super. That's exactly what I was thinking. Thanks, Dean.
Any others from the board? Any from the public? Online? Seeing none. The chair just wants to announce that next week on our meeting of the 23rd, which is our last meeting for the calendar year, we have tentatively scheduled the agenda item request that was made by Dee Dee Holt, Dr. Thompson, and joined in by Board Member Smith for the airport tree removal. But whether that will occur next week or subsequently, that will depend on when the Mass Environmental Protection Agency issues its determination on a petition that had been filed by Mr. Bixby. So I think that's an important piece of information the board has to have in front of us before we can put that on the agenda. But my intention is to put it on the agenda as soon as that comes in. With that, the town manager, I think I have
Yes.
to you for an announcement.
Yes, thank you. And I have Greg Berman, our Director of Natural Resources. Greg, why don't you go first?
Great, thank you.
Greg.
Just wanted to let the board and public know that the bulkhead at the town landing at Barn Hill, a portion of it has been able to be reopened. Our welder got out there and, despite holidays and working with the tides, we now have a big enough area for a, truck to work the landing bulkhead. A portion of it's still going to have to stay closed until we do the full bulkhead replacement and site improvements, but we do have an engineer on board and going through that design process. But wanted to let people know we're back open for business on a somewhat limited basis.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Greg. And I wanted to announce to the public and to the board that I have promoted Candace Cook as our assessing director. Candace has been with the town since 2006 and most recently as the assistant assessor in 2015. So that appointment took effect on Monday, the 15th, following a really fabulous send-off of Dale Kelly for her retirement on December 12th. So I had sent the board a memo. There's information in the main sheet. I wanted to make an announcement to recognize Candace for her hard work.
Thank you, Jill. I think that's an excellent appointment. I know my colleagues share that. It's nice to see continuity within the department, the division. Any other public comments? Okay, we'll go now to the first of two public hearings. First is to consider an application for a new annual entertainment license for Branches Grill and Cafe, 155 Core Road, and we'll open the public hearing by asking the clerk to read the notice.
Town of Chatham Select Board Public Hearing Notice. Notice is hereby given that the Chatham Select Board will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, December 16th, 2025 at 5:30 p.m. in the large meeting room at the Town Hall Annex, 261 George Ryder Road, to consider a request for a new annual entertainment license for indoor live music for Branches Grill and Cafe, 155 Crowell Road, Chatham. All interested parties are encouraged to participate in person or remotely via the link in the posted agenda.
So Mr. Ian Burt, the owner, was notified of the hearing. Is he present, or is there a representative present? Shauna.
Hi, Shauna Neely, licensing agent. Ian had indicated that he would be able to attend, but he may have gotten held up at the restaurant. It's pretty straightforward. It's a small space, so he's only looking for maybe a trio now and again, possibly steel drums during the summer months.
The question I had, Shauna, was the date of the event is just responded to with the word varied, and also dates of the entertainment, hours of the entertainment.
So it would be during his normal operating hours, but not a nightly event. It would just be sprinkled throughout the calendar year.
Can we grant something like that with,
You do it with all the other annual licenses.
okay. Any questions or comments from the board?
Move approval.
It's a public hearing, so I'll ask
Sorry.
if there are any comments from the public. I see none, so you.
Move approval.
Is there a
Second?
Moved and seconded. Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the roll. Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Dykens?
Aye.
Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you,
Thank you.
Shauna. Okay. Next item on the agenda is public hearing. And I'm going to ask, the subject matter as posted on the agenda is an appeal hearing of the Historic Business District Commission decision on the application number 25-084 by Chatham Productions LLC relative to the demolition of certain buildings at 776 Main Street, the Monomoy Theater property. We will open the public hearing by asking the board clerk to read the public hearing notice. Stuart?
Town of Chatham Select Board Public Hearing Notice. Notice is hereby given that the Chatham Select Board will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, December 16th, 2025 at 5:30 p.m. in the large meeting room at the Town Hall Annex, 261 George Ryder Road, to consider appeals by Chatham Productions LLC of the Historic Business District Commission's decision on application 25-084 relative to the demolition of certain buildings located at 776 Main Street, the Monomoy Theater property. All interested parties are encouraged to participate in person or remotely via the link in the posted agenda.
Thank you, Stuart. I would note for the record, we are talking about one building, and that's the former Playhouse. And I have a couple of procedural points first before we get into the appeal. First of all, and all of this was in the packet that was posted, this is the way we're going to run this. There'll be a presentation by the appellant, and then board questions and comments, although the board members are free to interrupt with questions at any time. Then there'll be a presentation by the Historic Business District Commission Chair. There will also be board questions and comments. Then we will entertain public comments. Under our rules, it's 5 minutes per person within the discretion of the chair. Then we will read correspondence that has come in and which has been provided to the two parties. Then we will give the appellant an opportunity to rebut. There will be further board questions and comments, or an opportunity for that. Then we will close the public hearing. The board will deliberate and make its decision. During the process of deliberation and decision-making, the audience is not permitted to participate. The second comment I want to make is that the town council is online, and also we have the availability of the police chief, the fire chief, and the building commissioner. And I note the presence in the audience of the chair of the Chatham Historical Commission, who has submitted materials for public comment. I expect he's probably going to want to speak during the public comment section, but board members are free to ask questions of anybody they want at any time. The standard of review for this board is as set forth in the memo, which is based on advice given to us by former town council and current town council, and I'm going to read the standard. If the select board concludes that the HBDC decision was arbitrary, capricious, unreasonable, inconsistent with the HBDC's own rules, or that the HBDC acted outside the scope of its authority, the board can annul, modify, or supplement said decision as it deems appropriate. If the board determines that the HBDC's decision was reasonable in light of the established facts and within the scope of its legislative authority, the HB decision should be affirmed. And the final thing I want to do is to read the reasons set forth in the decision made by the HBDC for denying the application, if I can find it. Here it is. They listed 5 reasons, so please bear with me. They voted 0 to 5 in opposition to granting the request to demolish this particular structure. Specific reasons. 1, the theater structure represents an important part of Chatham's history based upon information presented to the Commission along with the recommendation of the Chatham Historic Commission. It is clear that this structure has a rich history that is worthy of preserving. 2, the Commission is cognizant of the fact that the building is in disrepair, but there is no indication that the building cannot be restored and renovated to support a viable use while preserving the building's rich historical character. Nor is there any evidence from the building commissioner or otherwise that the demolition is required to preserve public safety. While the Commission may have considered a report/assessment by a structural engineer, no such report was provided despite the fact that the applicant stated that an engineer had inspected the building. 3, while the applicant and Chatham Police Department has introduced evidence that the building is currently an attractive nuisance, there is no evidence that the building cannot be adequately secured from illicit entry. 4, documentation from the Massachusetts Historic Commission and National Park Service showing the submittal and denial of the application to be placed on the National Register of Historic Places was not provided. Accordingly, the Commission cannot presently credit the applicant's verbal representations regarding the rejection of an application to place this building on the National Register. Additionally, a rejection of any effort to place the structure on the register would not be determinative of the question as to whether the structure is sufficiently historical to reject an application for demolition. 5, based upon the foregoing, the Commission members found that there was a lack of sufficient evidence to support the demolition of the structure. The Board finds that the denial of the request to demolish and the preservation of the building is in the public interest. The applicant, Chatham Productions, LLC, did submit a timely appeal to the Select Board, as they are permitted to do under the statute. and that has been provided to the board. It is about 5 pages in length. And I am now going to turn to Mr. Gregory Clark and/or Victoria Clark to make a presentation. Are you there? And please feel free to go forward.
Mr. Chair, did we read the hearing into?
Yes, hi, can you hear
Pardon
me?
me?
Did we read the?
Can you hear me?
Yes, one second.
Oh.
We read the notes. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, Victoria. Please
No,
proceed.
of course,
Please proceed.
thank you. Okay, I wanted to thank the select board as well as Darcy Sequin of the HVDC for taking the time to have a site walkthrough 2 weeks ago at the former Monomoy Theater site. We are appealing the HVDC decision to deny the demolition of the former Monomoy Theater building, as we feel it is arbitrary and capricious. As the chair just stated, the HVDC listed 5 reasons for the denial of the demo approval, and while they did request a continuance, we did not want to draw out the process out longer, as we feel 3 of these items are not relevant to the historical significance of the property, and we wanted to move the property forward. Nevertheless, we did provide the entire structural report, and while we did not provide a plan to address the illicit entry at the property or a replacement plan at this point, we are now going to move forward with allowed by right uses in the GB2, which this property is located in, which include but are not limited to retail, office, restaurant. Whether or not this will be the case, whether or not the select board allows the demolition of this structure or not, this structure will no longer be a theater. We have not provided a proposed layout of the new buildings because the final layout will be dependent upon the determination of the removal of the existing structure. Once we have that determination, we will proceed with our proposed design for this submission to the HVDC, whether it is a new building or it is reutilizing the existing building for a different use. Speaking to the historical significance of the structure, as we stated in our appeal, there was no documentation that the structure had been deemed in the way the town requires a structure be deemed by the state or the town as historic, which is supported partially through our Mass Historic Commission's correspondence with the Chatham Historic Commission, as well as their correspondence with us. In 2011, the Chatham Historic Commission submitted Form Bs for over 50 properties in Chatham as inventory forms to the Mass Historic Commission. These inventory forms do not deem the structure historic, rather it opens the door for the potential for them to be deemed historic. The 2019 follow-up submission by a preservation consultant that was hired by the Chatham Historic Commission featured additional information that the 2011 submission did not. However, that additional information featured some correct information, such as that the architecture on the Monomoy Theater is Greek Revival, and while the Washington Taylor House is Greek Revival architecture, the former Monomoy Theater building is not. Additionally, in the letter that was submitted with the continuation forms, it stated that they believe the property could be eligible to be deemed historic, but not that it was already eligible. In our opinion, the HVDC, as well as some other community members, want the former theater restored as a theater and nothing else. As we have stated today, there will not be a theater regardless of whether we have to keep this structure or not. We have received no support in the past 6 years for a variety of plans and approvals for projects that would have funded the lengthy and costly process to restore and bring back the theater, which is ultimately what has brought us here today and why we are appealing this decision.
Thank you. I do want to note that the structural report was provided to the Select Board, as well as a number of photographs. I did want to ask this question. If you were compelled to restore this building, do you have a guesstimate as to what that would cost, regardless of what the use might be? I suppose it does have a bearing on what, I suppose what you decide to do with it has a bearing.
Yeah, I think that
This is Greg.
we obviously have, this is Greg Clark,
Yeah.
yes. We have internal, our own estimates of what it's going to cost for us to do what we plan on doing on the site, but we're not willing to share that at this time because it's irrelevant to what happens with whether this building stays or goes. If the building stays, as we said previously several times, when we purchased the property, we did due diligence and we had a structural engineer and architect go out and walk through the building. They confirmed for us that basically we would have to rebuild all the flooring framing in the building, a lot of the roof structure, and potentially quite a bit of the exterior wall. So we knew all along it would have to happen that way, and we anticipated that in our financial model. So we have no problem either way, whether we utilize the existing structure and convert it, or whether we tear it down. It doesn't make a difference to us. Okay?
Thank you. I would note that prior council has advised that it is certainly open to the select board to consider the replacement use of this building if it were to be demolished. And I would also note for the record that the appellant did provide us as well with some correspondence between the applicant and the Mass Historic Commission. I think there was also some correspondence between the Chatham Historical Commission and the applicant that was provided to us. So I want to acknowledge that. Any questions from the board at this time? Mr. Metters and then Mr. Dykens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is either for the applicant or actually maybe Katie. So with the site, I know there's a strong sentiment that people would like to see a theater there, but if it were a theater or the footprint, and I guess it would kind of depend on what potential future use became of the property. What is the expected parking requirement? Because historically, when there was a theater, everyone parked in the grass. 40, 50 cars. I don't know exactly what it was, but you're going to need some kind of parking for the use, which would be either on the side by the lawn or further in the back. So I guess the question is, potentially what kind of parking space are we looking at, location, and access point?
So if I could, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Katie Donovan, Director of Community Development. If the future use of the property were to be a restaurant, the parking requirement is 1 space for every 4 seats, plus 1 space for each employee on the busiest shift. So depending on the size of the restaurant, would be, dependent on the number of parking spaces. Also for retail and office, I believe, the parking requirement is 1 space per 150 square feet of area devoted to use by the public. Was that correct? So again, it would also all depend on the type of use that was in the building, but yes, the requirements, any new use would need to go before the planning board, and for site plan approval, it would need to meet the parking requirements as set forth in the zoning bylaw.
Would the access, because I guess maybe for Mr. Clark, would the access be coming from Route 28 or Depot Road for the, I guess, the redevelopment of the property?
That's for you, that's for the Clarks? Is that directed at them?
Yeah, we haven't determined which side we would be pulling the vehicles off of yet. I mean, obviously, there is access on the back on Depot Road. There's access currently on the front on Main Street. We'd probably be more looking towards having it come in the back so that Main Street didn't have as much traffic on it, but that would be discussions with the planning board.
Okay, so just make sure I'm understanding a little bit. So basically, I know the backside of this parcel, we've had multiple conversations about. We had a special town meeting about having an overlay district, some element of housing. That did not move forward. There was, I think, 4 or 5 residential homes that were proposed at this site that went through ZBA approval. 2 seemed to have some support, but that event, essentially did not move forward. My understanding is there's always been a need for some kind of financial element to help fund any type of push to bring the theater back because of the economics of it. I understand the development concept of it. You got to have funds from somewhere to carry other elements of the project. So if the appeal from HBDC were denied, the backside that has had those kind of proposals in the past, would not have any such proposals and essentially would most likely have like parking elements or some kind of minimal use. Would that be safe to say?
It would be safe to say that it will become parking.
Okay. That's it for the moment.
Mr. Dykens.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear about a statement. If we were to uphold the HBDC's decision to deny a demolition, is my understanding correct that you're ambivalent about whether it actually does come down or not? Because in the future, when you do your by right commercial development there, you're going to incorporate some part or piece of that building into that commercial development. Is that a fair statement?
Not exactly. So we're developers. If we can build the new building from ground up, it will work better. The existing structure is not a very good layout. But however, if we're required to keep it, we can figure out how to make it work with the frame that's there.
Okay, I mean, if you're envisioning, just in my pea brain, and I'm not a developer, but if you're envisioning a restaurant called the Playhouse and kept the foyer, if you will, where the ticket office was, that would be really cool. Some type of application of some creativity, knowing that there are a lot of heartstrings are being pulled with respect to this question about the Monomoy Theater. It pulls a lot of heartstrings, folks in this town, as you well know, I think, Greg. So if there's a way to incorporate some element of the theater into future development, I think that would go a long way for the town. Thanks. I'll have more questions later, but I think.
Shireen.
Thank you. I just have a technical question for, I guess, Katie, or the HBDC's jurisdiction is the exterior of the building. Does it speak to the interior of the building?
Yes, they do not have
Jurisdiction
over the interior.
Okay, all right. I just want to make that clear. So this is for the Clarks. I guess you said that you were unwilling to disclose any financial cost to rehabbing or demolishing the building, but I wanted to know, does the structural evidence demonstrate that the building cannot be rehabilitated or that the rehabilitation is financially challenging for you?
It's more that it's financially challenging. It's, you can pretty much, I mean, we have restored buildings. We have placed about 21 buildings onto the National Park Service Register. We actually own 4 of them ourselves that we did that in. And some of them, the structures are as old as the mid-1800s. We went into them, we brought a structural engineer in, and we rebuilt them with the timbers the exact size that they built the original building with. We did it because we wanted to preserve that look of that structure. So you can do it, it's just obviously it costs more than conventional framing and conventional construction.
Okay. I probably have a follow-up question on that, but I'm going to wait. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have a couple of questions, I guess, for the Clarks, and I appreciate that you provided the 2019 structural summary. I think it was the executive summary, maybe it was the full report, but it basically laid out the condition of the building at the time. We did a site visit on December 3rd. We obviously couldn't go in the building because it's pretty well boarded up. But we saw, and you indicated, some evidence of attempts by, I guess, young people to get into the building. And I'm concerned about not just the history issue, but the public safety issue. And what efforts have you made in the 6 years you've owned the building to protect it from outside invasion, as it were? It seems to have, certainly just from the visible, from the outside, looking at it from the outside, seems to have gotten worse. And so I wanted to just ask, what efforts have you undertaken?
So as we discussed when we did the walkthrough, we went through with the board, but I'll do it for everyone that's online and listening also. We secured the building. When we purchased the building, a lot of the doors did not have locks on them. we secured them. And we secured the windows. Over the years, people have been breaking into the buildings and damaging the interior. And we have gone down there and we have, re-secured the openings after they damaged them. But then they got to the point in the last 2 years that they're just destroying things, smashing windows, smashing doors, and just breaking things. Before, they were just trying to force doors open and get in. Now they're smashing them and breaking them up. They have no consideration for others' property, as we discussed. And we've had this conversation. The police are well aware of, this happening over the years. There have been some incidences where other things, like I said, we filed and received the police reports of several of the instances which were not in the letter that was handed to the HPDC for that meeting, which then we brought up to show that there was even more than people were aware of. But if we go and board up an opening, the next week, they smash the next window beside it. So the question we have for the town is that, in some instances, these young kids that are doing it in most occasions, their names are redacted from the police reports. However, there's other information in the police reports that lead us to believe who these people are. And we've asked several times, why aren't they being forced to at least deal with the parents so the parents understand what their children are doing? Because if they'll do this to the theater building and the other building, what's going to prevent them from doing it to someone's house who goes away for 4 months during the winter? So yes, we have been addressing this, but we're at a point now that they break, if we secure every opening, they just break the next window. And is that what the town wants to see? Us to board up every window? And if there's ever a incident where they do, and we believe we have a police report of one time them setting up a place as if they were going to set a fire in the building. If they ever set a fire to the building, and the windows are all boarded up, that's not a good thing for the fire department to be going in there. So we agree, and this is why we say it's kind of a nuisance that, what do you want us to do? Do you want us to board up every opening? I don't know if the town wants that look. We prefer that the people that are doing it actually act responsibly and not damage our property.
Has the damage that has been caused by these break-ins affected the structural soundness of the building, or more either the cosmetic aspects or something non-structural?
We have not looked at it as far as, has it caused any damage to the structure when they smashed, windows or doors in? But the stuff that they did inside the building is more cosmetic. They spray paint over all the walls and things like that. Mm-hmm. So okay. I'm not sure. We have not gone inside with our structural engineer again to look at it to see if they actually damaged anything further.
Had you considered, particularly in the last couple of years, since from what you say things have gotten worse, putting a fence around the building? I know it's a pretty big structure. It's kind of ramshackle. There are different parts to it, added at different times. But had you considered that as a way of securing the property?
I can tell you this, we're going to apply to put a fence around the entire property, and then we're going to start doing our prep work. Yeah. So, but I don't know that that's going to stop mischievous kids from breaking in. If they'll smash windows and doors, I think that they'll find a way to get over a fence. So, unfortunately.
Well, I bring these issues up because I do think public safety, to me, it's more than just an attractive nuisance. I think it's a public safety hazard, and I don't want to see in Chatham what happened in Worcester 26 years ago. But in any event, if there are no other questions from the board at this time, I will ask the clerks, did you have anything more you wanted to say? You're going to come back later for a rebuttal, but I just wanted to ask if you had anything more you wanted to add at the present time.
No, we're all set, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to ask now the Chair of the Historic Business District Commission, Darcy Sequin, to present a response.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Darcy Sequin, Acting Chair of the HBDC. I would just like to reiterate what happened at the hearing with the Clarks. After hearing the Clarks' application for demolition, the HBDC commissioners asked them several questions, specifically regarding the condition of the property and why there was no effort to restore the property in the 6 years that they owned it, and where was the documentation to support the demolition, the records regarding their application for the Massachusetts and National Registry, and the subsequent denial. Mr. Clark stated that he had it in an email. We saw no written documentation. I then polled the commissioners to see if they felt that demolition was warranted, given the information that was provided to us at that meeting. We all felt we did not have enough information to approve the demolition. I then proceeded to inform the Clarks there were some options that they could take. Excuse me. Number one, to withdraw the application. Number two, to continue the application to a later date so they could provide further information on what they had done to receive a denial from the Mass Registry and National Registry. Ms. Clark held up a folder and said, "I have it right here." So number three was another option, to continue with a vote, which they knew was going to be denied. So they opted for number three, and the vote was 5-0 to deny the application for the demolition. So that brings us here today.
Thank you. I wanted to ask a question. Does the HBDC look to guidance from the Chatham Historical Commission on whether something is historical? Obviously, if a building is within your district, you have jurisdiction over it. What do you do about the historical aspects or not of a particular building? How do you address that?
We don't normally interact with them, but we have had communication with the commission,
Okay.
the Historical Commission.
Any other questions? Shireen?
Darcy, I have a question, maybe it's for you or for Katie. Is the National Register listing required under the HBDC Act for a structure to be considered historically significant? Is that a factor? I mean, is that a guiding factor?
It was not a deciding factor. It certainly was a factor.
But is it? I'm asking, is it? Is the National Register listing required under the HBDC Act for a structure to be considered historically significant? Katie,
No,
can
I
you?
don't believe it is
Katie,
required.
do you know?
Sure, just from the HBDC guidelines and procedures, any building or structure located within the district which is in whole or in part 75 years old or more, or any building which has been designated by the Chatham Historical Commission to be historically significant, to be a historically significant building or structure, following a finding by the CHC that such building or structure is, one, associated with one or more historical persons or events, or with cultural, economic, or social, or political history of the town or commonwealth, or two, possesses architectural value or significance in terms of period, style, method of construction, or association with an historically prominent architect or builder, either by itself or in conjunction with a group of buildings or structures, or three, listed individually on the National Register of Historic Places or is listed as a contributing building in the National Register District.
You're reading from the HBDC rules or the Historical Commission rules?
HBDC design and guidelines
Design
and procedures.
Ms. Davis?
Thank you. That was the question I had.
Mr. Meadows?
Darcy, you said that you asked the applicant, what steps are they taking to preserve the structure? And this is one thing I don't want to get lost in the process, because, and if I'm wrong, correct me, but from the HBDC perspective, the history of this parcel has been, there needs to be some kind of financial engine to kind of drive the theater. People want the theater back. There's a lot of sentiment for it. and everything. And my read, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, my read is the steps of either going to the overlay district at special town meeting, which we know did not happen, the actions of taking and developing the back parcel to residential homes or slightly higher end houses, that was kind of that was presented as the key element in bringing forth the development of the front, the theater, the Washington Taylor House and everything. So am I correct in saying that was the presentation that was made by the applicant, understanding that this really can't be done unless the financials of another part of the parcel kind of help ground, future projects because of the dollars and cents and the economics of a project like this? Is that a safe comment, or?
We don't look at the financial aspect of anything. People have come before us for other things, and it's financially, we can't do this. We do not look at that financial aspect of it.
Okay, fair enough.
Does that answer your question?
It does answer the comment. And then another comment that was made, and I need to put my 2 cents worth with this, is, everyone says, everyone has their kind of, stays within their jurisdiction. I served on the planning board for many years. Planning board, HBDC, we are very distinct regulatory commissions, but we have a lot of overlap. So having certain, in this case, like questions that the HBDC is asking that potentially the planning board are going to be asking is common, because we've done that with, CVS, CVM,
Right.
Collaborate together. So there is, even though HBDC is a separate regulatory commission, it is not unusual for them to kind of go into some of the gray areas of the planning board and vice versa, because we have similar, reviews criteria, and that it's collaboration is typical in
Right.
some of these reviews. So I just want to clarify that too.
Okay. Any other questions of Ms. Segwin? Okay. Thank you, Darcy.
Thank you.
I'm now going to open it up to public comments, and under the Select Board policy for public participation, each speaker gets 5 minutes within the discretion of the chair. So anyone want to step forward and make comments? Please identify yourself.
I'd rather be at the dentist than be here tonight. I've been involved with the
State your name, please.
property.
Your name, Mr.
Oh, sorry, Frank Messina.
Are you speaking for
58 Island
yourself?
View, South Chatham,
you
Chair of the Chatham Historical Commission.
Okay, thank you.
I've been involved with the Monomoy Theater property, 770 Main Street, since the late 90s, and on the Historical Commission for many, many years. I worked with Mr. Clark and Victoria over many years in the Historical Commission in attempting to find a way to keep this property together. Unfortunately, it's being slowly demolished, one building after the other, and now we're down to the last main building, the theater. There's a lot of discussion here, and things are getting distracted. As far as I'm concerned, the issue really is very simply, is this building, is this property historically significant? Does this Historical Commission have the authority to do that, to designate something is historically significant? We did that again today, and you have a memo from the commission in which we reaffirm the decisions, the previous decisions from 2011 and 2019, not just by the Historical Commission, but our preservation consultants, the professional consultants, that this building and these property does meet the criteria for eligibility on a national register. Ms. Davis asked a very good question. Is it necessary for a building to be on the national register to be historically significant? Absolutely not. They're two separate tracks, okay? The Historical Commission tomorrow can apply to Mass Historic and ask that this building be recognized as eligible as a National Register property. We didn't do that. I didn't do it as chair because the applicant, or the appellant, I love that new word, that we have here has indicated he was going to do it. He was proceeding not just to get it listed, not to necessarily get it listed on the National Register, but so he could get the tax credit. You can get a tax credit if you have a commercial property in which you're going to restore it in accordance with Department of Interior standards. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. There may have been some conversation with somebody at Mass Historic and said, what do you think? And they may have said, well, we don't think so. It took over 20 years for us to get the South Chatham Village listed on the National Register. It takes a long time. It's not a yes or no, and it's not one person's opinion. There are state review boards. There's a lot of things that have to happen. So we really never crossed that bridge. The issue here before you, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm not on the HBDC, Historical Commission, is this building historically significant? Is it worthy of being saved, an attempt to be saved? And the answer to that question as far as the Historical Commission is yes. I think the HBDC has done their due diligence and said, well, one little thing, did you apply to Mass Historic? And if you did you get a registry approval or not? But notwithstanding, even if they did not get approval from Mass Historic that this property is eligible for a National Register, it does not imply that the building is not historically significant. An historic district is created by the town of Chatham at a town meeting, okay? A historical commission is a separate bylaw. We have the authority to determine something is historically significant. We also have the authority to issue a demolition delay. There happens to be an overlap here between the HBDC and the Historical Commission. So I hope you, at this particular point, can recognize that this building is historically significant to the people of Chatham, to the town of Chatham. Is there a way to do something with this property? And, you know, the idea from my friend, Mr. Clark, that, well, we're not going to build a theater. Okay, if you're going to give up on that, fine. But it doesn't mean you have to destroy the building, okay? You can have an historic building and provide some kind of an adaptive use that saves and maintains the exterior of the building, not the interior, the exterior. And yet we still have the Monomoy Theater building and the property for the people of Chatham. 32 seconds, not bad.
Mr. Messina, I have a couple of questions. You did submit a couple of letters. We made them available to both parties. I will read them during the, after we finish with public comments. I'll read those letters. I wanted to ask you a question. I think you answered it. Shireen, Ms. Davis asked you about whether if a property was not on the register, could it still be historically significant? You answered yes.
We do it every day.
And the other question I have is, if it's not deemed eligible for listing, can it still be historically significant?
Absolutely. Let me give you a quick, sorry.
Go ahead.
The entire Stage Harbor Road, the Historical Commission determined it was eligible and historically significant. We determined that it should be a National Register District. We proceeded to receive what was called a Determination of Eligibility, a DOE, a Determination of Eligibility. All that says is that's the first step in a long process. It could be eligible. Now you got to go back and do all the work to prepare the applications and convince not just one member of Mass Historic, but the whole State Review Board that it is eligible for a National Register District. I use the Stage Harbor as an example because it's one in which it was very confusing. The residents did not want it, and so the Historical Commission's backed away. We weren't going to force something. Unlike the Old Village, or the Marconi, or the South Chatham, where the residents really wanted it to happen. Even though the owner of this property may not want it to be listed on the National Register, it doesn't mean it can't be. It can't be determined that it's eligible. Notwithstanding that, to talk about that issue of the National Register, the building does, as far as the Historical Commission is concerned, meet the criteria that we use. Is this property historically significant to the history and the culture of the town? You know, it may not be the prettiest building in town, but it doesn't mean it's not historical. I mean, something didn't happen here. Mr. Dunbar, who's well-known, and that's one of the criteria used, is this property associated with one or more significant people? And for those of you who are not sailors, who may not know who Mr. Dunbar is, but, you know, I see Stu smiling. You know, there were a lot of important people to the town of Chatham who were involved in this building and designing it and creating it, so.
I have one final question for you. One final question for you. In the appeal made by the Clarks, they refer to Section 6C of the rules and regulations of the Historical Commission, which says, and they quote, "The commission may make recommendations to the Board of Selectmen or other town bodies regarding the protection and preservation of significant historic resources in the community." And they go on to say that there are no documented meeting minutes from the CHC to the selectmen recommending that this structure be designated as an historic structure with a proof of such historic significance. My question is, if you have a circumstance where the commission, your commission, determines that a particular structure is historical or historically significant, but don't proceed to make a recommendation to the select board to do something about it, does that mean it's no longer historical, or?
With all due respect to this august body, you have nothing to say whether or not the Historical Commission determines, in accordance with Chapter 158 of the Demolition Delay Bylaw, whether or not we consider the building to be historically significant. It's no different than
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is whether the absence of a recommendation to us derogates.
Immaterial.
Okay.
We had 66 applications last year. We didn't come back to you 66 times and say, hey, this thing is historically significant, what should we do?
Okay.
We proceed independent within ourselves, within the commission, within our bylaw, and with the Cape Cod Commission, which we won't get into because it's another whole story.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any further
Thank you,
questions?
Greg.
Any other public comments? Yes.
My name is Brooke Thomas, and I own 51 Elephant's Lane in the old village of Chatham, a home built by noted naval architect Spalding Dunbar, the cousin of Harold Dunbar. The interior of my home has mural walls paintings by Harold Dunbar, and recently celebrated an in-home viewing organized on the occasion of the Chatham Historical Society's 100th anniversary a few years ago. Today, I'm here to oppose the demolition of the Monomoy Theater. Chatham's value isn't just its coastline, it's its character. And character is made of the places that tell our story, not the places that maximize a parcel. Once we start knocking down the buildings that carry our cultural memory, we don't modernize Chatham, we erase it and replace it with something you could drop into any wealthy coastal town in America. The Monomoy isn't just an old structure, it's a symbol of the arts in Chatham and a direct thread to the people who built this town's creative life, starting with Harold Dunbar's early work, converting this space into a community arts venue. That legacy still matters, and it echoes. This town is already under pressure from constant redevelopment. If we can't protect a landmark like this, one that even our Historic Business District Commission recognized as worth preserving, then what exactly are we preserving? Keep the Monomoy. Let's be the generation that adds to Chatham's story without deleting the chapters that made it special.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Ms. Smith?
Hannah Smith, North Road, Chatham. I wasn't going to speak, but a few weeks ago, my mom, who is actually from Ohio, but she didn't go to Ohio University, but she ended up here. She lived with a woman who opened up her doors to let her stay at her house.
Without deleting the chapter.
And that same woman had opened up her doors again to house some of the Ohio University students when they were here in the summer. And to me, it's not like she was into theater really or, went to any of the shows, but it was important to her because she felt that other people in the community were connected to the theater. And then also the woman that had taken her in felt that this was very important. So when she had seen that it could possibly be demolished, she thought how sad that is. At the end of the day, I think a lot of the things behind cultural significance have been brought up, and I'm not really sure that it's anyone's place outside of the town to decide if something is culturally significant or not, because people that have grown up in the town have various reasons why different things in Chatham are significant to them. In Boston, for example, the Citgo sign is of cultural significance to a lot of people. People outside of Boston or even New England, even people in Vermont, they might think, why would a Citgo sign be culturally significant to anyone? But at the end of the day, everyone has their reasons for thinking that. But there's people that are no longer with us in this town that I think 100% would be up here saying the same thing. This is a part of a lot of people's lives, whether or not they were involved with the theater. I just think recognizing the original building, the Playhouse, regardless of its current use, whether it becomes a retail or a restaurant, would be really important, because if the building itself is unrecognizable, then the alumni of the theater program, they're coming by, they're driving to visit. If they just see a completely new building, what does it mean? It's not necessarily that they care about what's going inside. Obviously, they would love it to still be a theater program, but a lot of people know it's not that realistic now. But to see that building when you drive by, it doesn't really matter as much to people what's inside of it, as long as it's still alive and going. 100 years from now, if people go by and say that building was still here, they're going to know what that building was here for. If it wasn't there anymore, then it's just commercial buildings and doesn't really mean anything. At the very least, I would like to see some sort of, if the select board does decide to overturn this decision, I would like to at least see some roadside, some recognition of what used to exist on the property. I think that's really important for everyone that comes into town, people that are moving into town, kids that are leaving the school system and becoming adults. I just think there's signs around town that everyone goes by and just reads. And it sticks with you forever. So I think that's really important. And I just wanted to say something because I knew that my mom would like me to say something. And I know that the woman that helped her start her life here would have wanted that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Phillips.
Brian Phillips, 374 Orleans Road. Prioritizing, theater and the arts has, always been important to Chatham. And I think, and that place has brought a lot of joy to a lot of people, and I think tearing it down would be a tragedy. I was just going to tell one quick story. Is when I used to work at the Red Nun, the theater would come out. When the theater would get out, everyone would go over to the Red Nun to eat afterwards. And on more than, you could feel like the positive energy, from the people and the joy. And on more than one occasion, show tunes would break out. And, theater people are a lot of fun, and that's, something that we should preserve. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Any online? Yes, ML. Who's that?
It's Mary Ann Lewis.
Please identify yourself and speak.
Miss Lewis, I think you're muted.
I heard her name.
I said it.
You said it.
Ms. Lewis?
Price,
Please begin.
trying,
Give you one last chance.
hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, finally, sorry. It's this whole setup, and I just heard about this meeting, so I got on pretty quickly and didn't set it up. I'm sorry. And I hope that I don't repeat things that I already discussed earlier, which
Can you please identify yourself?
Yes, my name is Mary Ann Lewis. I live at 21 Cod Lane in Chatham.
Okay.
And been a resident here for 30 years. And also, as my youth, remember fondly going to many Monomoy Theater productions. And I do feel strongly that the decision to not allow the theater building to be destroyed should be upheld. My main issue also is that there tends to be a trend now lately in town of people coming in, saying that they're going to do one thing with a property or a building, then doing nothing with it until it completely falls in disrepair, and then kind of saying like, oops, sorry, oops, there's nothing we can do now, but like, tear it down and build something brand new and monetize it as much as possible. And I think that the board really needs to stand against that, because to my knowledge, and I would love to be corrected if I'm wrong, there really has been no, the new owners have not really done anything to lessen the damage in the 5 or 6 years that they've owned this building. Like, I mean, have they even put dehumidifiers in the building to kind of, control the mold, or done any type of remedial work to preserve the building, rather than just kind of sit while they went through the planning process and not done at least the bare minimum to try to make sure that the building was salvageable. And I think the building probably is salvageable. It might be expensive to do it, and we might need to get creative as far as finding other people to join in the project. But I don't think there's anything that has been said or that we should just abandon the idea of a theater right now. The world is a very tough place right now, and people need things that make you feel good. And the Monomoy Theater has always made people feel good when it was in operation. And that's all I need to say. Thank you, and thanks for their patience with the mic situation. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other comments online? I see none. I'm going to read some correspondence. We've just received just 2 items of correspondence, and they're both from the Chatham Historical Commission. The first is dated December the 11th, from Frank Messina, Chairman, Chatham Historic Commission. Members of the Select Board, the primary focus of the subject appeal is that 776 Main Street Monomoy Theater is not historically significant. In addition, the Chatham Historical Commission has no authority to make this designation, and that the Mass Historic Commission agreed the subject property was not an historic property, and the CHC failed to provide information required to obtain the necessary designation required to allow the applicant to receive tax credits. The Historical Commission clearly has the authority from Chapter 158 of the bylaw establishing the Historical Commission. The CHC designated 776 Main Street, quote, historically significant in early 2010, and refers to attachments, as this was required as part of the process in authorizing our preservation consultant, N. Avery, in updating and preparing the MHC Form B, also referring to an attachment. Our professional preservation consultant, N. Avery, completed the National Register of Historic Places Criteria Statement Form, indicating the subject property was eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. The ongoing efforts by the CHC to obtain National Register designation for the subject property was continued again in 2019 by our preservation consultant, E. Dre, and additional research provided to MHC in our efforts to document the theater building complex. These are the first steps in the long process in assembling information to request a determination of eligibility, DOE, for 776 Main Street to Mass Historic Commission as eligible for a National Register designation, NRD. At this time, the property was sold, and the new owner, Greg Clark, informed me he was going to pursue the listing of 776 Main Street. The CHC backed off, as he had the resources and seemed committed to pursue the National Register designation process, the DOE, and the formal application, see attached letter. His interest stemmed from the possible tax credits when a National Register property is restored for commercial use. The National Register approval process for any structure or site is a long, complicated procedure and can take years. Structures can be listed for meeting a number of different reasons and criteria. Architecture is one, but not always the primary criteria, as is cultural and its impact to history of the community. There is no question the Monomoy Theater in the Historic District, HBDC, has had a significant and lasting impact on the history of Chatham. References in attached history. Hopefully together we can find a way to save this iconic structure for future generations in Chatham. The second letter, dated today, also from Mr. Messina, as chair of the Chatham Historic Commission. Members of the Select Board. At the December 16, 2025 Chatham Historical Commission meeting, the members voted to reaffirm the historical significance of the buildings at 776 Main Street. Mr. Lear motioned and Ms. Hamilton seconded that the Washington Taylor House and Monomoy Theater are historically significant structures because of their age, and they are unusually well-preserved examples of the Greek Revival and Colonial Revival styles, and are associated with influential individuals who played an important part in the history, social, and cultural development of Chatham. The Washington Taylor House and the Monomoy Theater possess integrity of location, design, setting, materials, workmanship, and association, and meet criteria A, B, and C of the National Register of Historic Places. The motion passed 7-0-0. Hopefully, together we can find a way to save this iconic structure for future generations in Chatham. That is the extent of the communications received by the Select Board. I want to ask so I'm going to take this back now before we allow rebuttal from the appellant. I want to ask a couple of questions of Town Council. And again, I want to go back to the public safety concerns that I've expressed. Mr. Tallerman, Jay, are you up there?
I am.
Jay, and maybe we need to expand on this by asking the building commissioner and the fire and police chiefs, what, if any, requirements or obligations could the town impose on a property owner in this instance to, for want of a better word, better protect this property?
You know, that's a difficult question, Dean, that we often face in demolition delay issues or issues where we have some extraordinary authority to slow down requested demolition, as is the case here. And this is a fairly extraordinary authority. It's a special act of the legislature, and the HBDC has pretty wide bandwidth with respect to its jurisdiction. We can't compel anyone to fix a property. We could certainly direct someone to secure. There's a process under Chapter 139 to secure a building that is serving as an attractive nuisance, but it would be limited to either securing or demolishing, as the case may be under Chapter 139. And then there's some analogous statutes under the Building Code and under the Board of Health's statutes to require folks to abate attractive nuisances. But in terms of restoring a property, we can't actually force someone to restore it to its original historic grandeur in any way, shape, or form. We get concerned as municipal advocates that sometimes demolition happens by way of neglect. The range of tools that we have to prevent that are pretty limited, however. So, I mean, this special act is designed as a means to kind of compel, encourage, coax property owners to do the right thing and repair and restore historic structures, ultimately requiring them to restore it rather than just secure it is something that's fairly difficult for us to do by way, if not impossible in many instances, to require that they do in kind of via an equitable order of any kind.
Let me ask a follow-up question.
Sure.
If the Select Board were to uphold the decision of the HBDC and deny the demolition of this property, and we had, and there subsequently occurred a tragedy akin to what happened with the Worcester cold storage situation, where for folks who may not remember, there was a homeless couple living in this building, and a fire was started. They evacuated the building, and the fire department went in because they were advised that there were people in the building. They tried to save them, but 6 firefighters were killed. It was a terrible, terrible tragedy. If something like that were to happen, would the town be liable? Would the property owner be liable? Is this a discretion? Is this a discretionary act?
Yeah, I don't see liability.
A discretionary exemption under 258?
Yeah, I don't see how the town could be liable. Enforcement is always discretionary, so we start there. And then we have the Tort Claims Act. So we have certain liability there, but there's no action that we're taking with respect to somehow making the property less safe. Again, we have the right, but not the obligation to do something under a statute like Chapter 139, where we could hold a hearing 2 weeks from now, for example, in order that they fence, secure, board up, or prevent attractive nuisances at the property. And that's enforceable in equity. So we can do that, but it's discretionary. It's not required, and no liability can flow from our decision not to do that. Whether to do that or not is another topic that we could discuss in another forum, but there's no obligation that would invoke any kind of liability here. And I'm not going to comment too robustly with respect to potential liability by the property owner. Obviously, it doesn't take much imagination to think about ways where someone could raise a claim for essentially maintenance of a negligent condition.
And I appreciate that, and that was probably an unfair part of the question. But on the first part of the question, I was thinking of the Ware case, where the town of Ware, where, as I recall, the town was held liable because someone was driving under the influence, and the police, I guess, did not interrupt what ultimately turned out to be a tragic result. Does that?
Yeah, that's a very kind of particular band of cases under the Tort Claims Act where there is a certain amount of duty, potentially, not in all circumstances, if there was a traffic stop or the means by which police had a duty to retain or restrict the movements of someone who was under the influence. There's a line of cases that fall on both lines of the liability there in terms of restraining folks or taking further action. I don't think that those are analogous to this situation here because there's not a police action or an entity that has an affirmative duty to prevent harm here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Metters?
Just to follow up on your concern with public safety, because it's a big building, and we toured the facilities, and doors are, boarded shut, windows are busted open. There's only so much you can do to kind of secure that spot, because kids get creative and they cause mischief. But if I heard Mr. Clark earlier, if tonight the select board decides to uphold the HBDC decision, I believe the suggestion was they were going to move forward with a by right, process and putting a fence up. So that fence up would, I guess, deal with a lot of the safety issues. And if there's construction on the site, kids will be less likely to go into an active work site.
Okay, thank you. At this point, I'm going to invite the appellant, the clerks, to make a rebuttal. I guess I would throw out for consideration as you do present that, Greg and Victoria, something that Mr. Dykens suggested. In a sense, perhaps preserving part of the building, maybe the icon, what I would call the iconic facade, which has been painted, sold in paintings here in Chatham over the years. But anyway, is that what you were talking about, Jeff?
Yes, and Frank, actually, Mr. Messina referenced adaptive reuse. And if by right, the Clarks can develop the property, commercially, I think it would be wise to incorporate some part of the Monomoy Theater in that development. I really appreciated the comments about Harold Dunbar. He was a wonderful painter, and he used the facility as an artist's facility for 3 or 4 or 5 years. He actually owned it for 4 years. There was a lot of history there, and again, as I referenced earlier, a lot of heartstrings. But Mr. Clark has spent a lot of money to buy this property and has been fairly well stymied in his efforts to get the financing to restore the theater by the town. And I understand it's expensive to do that. And by right, he can develop this parcel commercially. Now, it has to go back to HBDC, and there may be planning board considerations, et cetera. However, he does have rights. He owns the property. But I would strongly suggest, and again, Frank referenced it, some kind of adapted reuse of this property that does incorporate elements of its history as a wonderful playhouse and theater here in this town. I think a restaurant is a great idea. But anyway, those are my thoughts. And
Okay.
certainly has historical significance as well. Whether it's registered or not, it has a lot of historical significance for residents of this town that have history here.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Greg, did you want to make your rebuttal at this time?
Sure, no, I appreciate those comments, and we have no problem with it. Obviously, if we do decide that we're going to move forward and keep the theater portion of the building, then, we have no problem. If we're going to keep the structure, obviously the structure is going to be there. The inside will be different, but we think that we can do some things with it that would be nice for the community. I'm hesitant on believing that it will get approved by the different boards, because for the past 6 years, all we've gotten was pushback on everything. Some of the comments that were made by the speakers in the last 15, 20 minutes were very questionably accurate, okay? I'm not going to get into the details of it because we put it into our appeal to you, and the board can read them and understand them. There's a certain criteria of how something has to be determined to be historic. It's not one person or one group just saying it. It has to go through the procedure, and you have procedures in your bylaws that require it. And we contend that has not been done for this property. The CHC, a comment was made that I didn't really care for, as if they worked on it and then gave it to us and we dropped the ball. The CHC attempted to get the property accepted by the Mass Historic for 9 years. As I stated, we have put over 20 buildings onto the National Park Service Historic Register, and most of them are done in a year to 15 months. We have done it. Another comment was made about the love of the community for this theater, and I'm just going to tell you, we didn't buy this property from the Steinlers cold. They offered it to the town, and they also offered it to the group that was running the theater. Long before we got involved, long before they put it out on the market. So I discovered this because during the due diligence, they gave me all the correspondence packages, okay? Ohio University was the original backer of the theater. They left. They stopped because this was a triple net lease that the Steinler family had given to the Monomoy Theater Group, which was supported financially by Ohio University. A triple net lease means that the tenant has to pay for the maintenance of the property. There's a reason why Ohio University left. Then Hartford University stepped in. They backed out a full year before we bought the property. So the theater was closed a year before we closed on purchasing the property. That was, again, because financially it required a lot of work. The buildings were falling apart. There was no financial support from anyone to keep that theater going. And that's why it closed. Not because of something we did. And the reason why it's not on the National Register or accepted by Mass Historic is not because of something we didn't do. So I just wanted to clarify that. Now, we have no problem. We think the reality here is this is a double issue. We fully expect what you're going to decide tonight, but that's fine. We wanted it because this is the route that we have to take. We think that everybody has been voting for the past 6 years on this property based upon, and it's in the meeting minutes. We want the theater. The theater needs to go back there, and all comments like that. The reality of it is that the HBDC has guidelines to look at. And if you go back and look at the meeting minutes from, if you look at the transcript from that meeting, you'll see a lot of comments of, well, why aren't you doing the theater? That's not what they're supposed to be reviewing, and that's why we filed this appeal. So we will plan on moving forward one way or the other, and we will be back to the selectmen to look at, what else we can do there to try to do something for the community. But we will also take further appeal. Thank you very much.
Okay. I would just like to comment that there should be no presumption that the Select Board has made up its mind on this. Nor do we have any say about what the autonomous regulatory boards in this town do. They make their own decisions. With that, I'm going to ask the board to take a formal vote to close the public hearing unless there are any comments or questions of Mr. Clark. Stuart?
I just have a couple of,
Why don't you ask them before we close the hearing? Did you want to ask them, did you want to go into deliberation now, or did you want to ask questions of?
I don't have any questions for
Okay, so why don't we close the hearing? I'll take a
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I'll take a vote from Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens. Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. So public hearing is closed, and we are now into deliberations. Stuart, I'll recognize you first.
Sure. So I was just reading this over the last few days, some of the information that has been supplied to us. The Historical Business District Design Guidelines and Procedures under General Guidelines. The purpose of the district is to promote the cultural, economic, and general welfare of the inhabitants of the town of Chatham through appropriate development of commercial and business districts, protecting and preserving distinctive characteristics of buildings and places that have significant in the history and the development of Chatham. I mean, it seems to me that the HBDC and the Historical Commission has pretty much done their job and done exactly what they were supposed to be doing, preserving, when appropriate, these buildings. I've looked through, I don't see anything that's arbitrary or capricious that would make me inclined to overrule their decision. As a matter of fact, it kind of goes on, and maybe Jay can opine better than I, but I'm looking at Mr. Costello's opinion from 2020, and that agency action will not be overturned unless it is proven to be arbitrary, unreasonable, or inconsistent with the agency's own rules. I don't see that. Looks to me like they did exactly as, I mean, we can talk about whether it's going to be a theater or what the developers are going to do, but I'm just looking at the boilerplate of what we're supposed to be doing, and I don't see the grounds to overrule what they have decided. I also, we did a site visit with the Clarks, and, from my perspective, and I think pretty much the layman's perspective, the building is not secure. I don't know what they've done for 6 years. I haven't monitored the building, but I can tell you that some 8 or 10 pieces of plywood would have gone a long way to secure that building properly over the doors and windows. It isn't done. And it seems to me that that's a minor way of helping prevent some of the intrusions that he's experienced. I have concerns about the public safety condition of the building, but the owner has some responsibility to secure the building, and from my perspective, he hasn't done that adequately. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board?
Mr. Chair, no, I mean,
Mr. Metters.
this is, I mean, I don't see myself overturning the HPDC decision. I mean, I'll be honest with you. A lot of respect for our regulatory boards, you know, may not always disagree with some of their positions or findings, but, you know, our regulatory boards, they put a lot of time and effort into reviews, and, you know, I don't see enough information that would lead me to appeal, you know, to overturn them. But the reality is, you know, this property, 6 years, 7 years, whatever it's been, you know, the property owner does have rights, does have by right options to develop that property. And it appears that property is going to not contain a theater. I know that's a lot of desire for a lot of people. It has been part of the conversation earlier on with trying to find the funding element. You know, what is gonna fund that goal? You know, we've gone through the, you know, various housings and the housing project options in the back that have not come forth with any, you know, success. So I understand that from a developer's perspective, the frustration to have come to this point, but the reality is, you know, they have rights. They have their right to move it forward. Any building can be fixed to some degree. It's going to cost money, and there's going to be a lot of engineering elements that come up with redesigning the interior and making it all work. I mean, obviously, the front of that theater is the most visually, architecturally relevant thing that you want to keep. Further in the back, it's, you know, especially the rear of the building, it's nothing special architecturally. It's a big old, you know, side wall with a big barn door and big stairs that are not to code or anything. So there are elements of it that definitely could be saved and should be saved. You have, and then the reality too, with whatever happens, whether it had become a theater, a restaurant, retail, that site is going to be drastically changed because by code, you're going to have a hardscape parking lot, most likely. You're going to have a parking lot. I'm assuming hardscape could be shell, I don't know. But you're going to have the drainage redone, you're going to have lighting potentially. So that site's going to look extremely different than it does now, and it has been for you know, growing up here. So we are going to see a distinct change to that site with any kind of further development. So it appears that all doors are closed with some of the desires that some other people in the community want for this parcel. But I understand, you know, after 6 years, the applicant has a right to move forward. But tearing that building down is not something that I'm ready to entertain. I just hope that whatever the end of project is something a little bit, you know, that is something for the community. But you know, we are where we are. It is, you know, the applicant has, you know, taken a building that has had significant wear and tear over the years, and you know, at some point, you know, if they were to say we're going to put it on the market, my guess is the next person's going to come in with something similar. So it's, you know, it's a matter of who's going to end up doing it. It's going to be developed and redeveloped at some point. So I respect bottom line, I guess, for tonight, I'm not going to vote to appeal or overturn the HBDC decision.
Ms. Davis.
Thank you, Dean. So our role on this appeal is limited, that's for sure. And we're not here deciding tonight whether demolition will make the development easier or less costly, but whether the HBDC acted outside of its authority or made a decision that was arbitrary, capricious, or unreasonable. So after, you know, reviewing the documents and hearing the presentation, I don't find that to be the case here. The commission followed its established guidelines and acted within the authority granted to it under the town bylaw and the state statute. And because the appellant has, to me, not met the burden of showing that the HBDC decision was unlawful or unreasonable, I'm standing with the commission's decision.
Thank you. Mr. Dykens.
Yeah, I would conclude as well that the HBDC decision was not arbitrary, capricious, unreasonable, or inconsistent with the HBDC's own rules, or that it acted outside the scope of its authority. That being said, and I'll add that I thought the HBDC, when I watched the hearing, gave the Clarks a few off-ramps, if you will, come back with the history on the CHC and come back with the history with the Mass Historical Society, come back with the original engineering study, we'll have another conversation. So I appreciated that on the part of the HBDC, saying, hey, look, there's some off-ramps here, we can continue this conversation. That being said, I very much appreciate Greg Clark's comment about he would certainly pay attention to incorporating the historical aspects of the Playhouse. I would hope just the Playhouse, the front of the Playhouse building. And Mr. Metter's comments regarding the reality of the circumstances. He has, by rights, he's a developer, and he has rights as a developer under the auspices of the GB2 commercial development. And he's been very clear that if he didn't get financing with the properties over on Depot and next to Veterans Field to finance the refurbishing of the theater, that wasn't going to happen. It's clear. I want folks to know that we're not going to have a theater here unless some other third party jumps in here and decides that it's critical that the Monomoy Theater be redeveloped. I don't believe Mr. Clark or the Clarks have any intention now of having a theater there. So I think the best we could hope for at this point is that enlist with some persuasion that the Clarks would incorporate some of the historical aspects of that property in their future development and an adaptive reuse. That's the best I can come up with, and we're faced with certain realities of zoning and rights of developers. And one would hope that if the Clarks do come back and do attempt some or plan some adaptive reuse with the historical aspects of the Monomoy Theater, that the town would have a warm ear with respect to those plans. So I'm not going to vote to overturn the HBDC's decision. I think they did a fine job, especially with listening and giving them some off-ramps. But I would hope that there is some place where we can come to some common ground with the Clarks and they develop a wonderful development there in that property. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, I have followed this over the years, and I think it is very clear that once the Clarks bought this property, there was never, ever going to be a resurrection of what used to be the Monomoy Theater model. I think Mr. Clark would agree with that. They did have a theater model, but it was different. And they have decided, based on circumstances and the history of their endeavors, that it will not be a theater going forward, as is their right. They own the property, they bought it fair and square. I am satisfied on the public safety side with the comments of our town council, so I'm just going to proceed directly to the decision of the HBDC, and the first sentence that I read before of their specific reasons for denial, quote, "The theater structure represents an important part of Chatham's history." I am not persuaded by the argument that the appellant has made that it is not historically significant. I think it is abundantly clear from the record, from the history of what has happened here and the documentation, that it is historically significant. But more importantly, the standard, as has been articulated by several of my colleagues, is, and I'll quote it again, is that the board, this board, should uphold the decision of the HBDC unless we find it arbitrary, capricious, unreasonable, inconsistent with the HBDC's own rules, or that the HBDC acted outside the scope of its authority. And I don't think they have done that. So I cannot vote to overturn their decision. Now, it's open to the Clarks, if we take the vote, which we will in a few minutes, to appeal to the Superior Court, as they've indicated they plan to do, or they could go back to the HBDC and try to work out an arrangement where perhaps there could be a partial demolition while preserving certain parts of the building, particularly the facade, or as Mr. Dykens has mentioned, the entryway, I guess, is what you're talking about, and incorporate that into whatever else they want to do of a commercial or retail nature consistent with zoning. But that's their option. When you buy a property and you intend to develop it, there's a risk involved as to whether you're going to get the various approvals along the way. And they got the approval ultimately to demolish various buildings, various other buildings, which they came before us on. And we referred them back, we remanded them back to the HBDC, and they worked out an arrangement with them where they could demolish those particular buildings. In this case, the HBDC feels that this building is important historically, and as the chair indicated, there was certain material that they felt they wanted to see, and that wasn't provided to them at that time. It was provided to this board. So with that, I'm going to vote to uphold the HBDC decision, and I'm going to offer a motion that the Select Board vote to uphold the decision of the HBDC because it was not arbitrary, capricious, unreasonable, inconsistent with the HBDC's own rules, nor did the HBDC act outside the scope of its authority. That's the motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further deliberation or discussion? I'll call the roll. Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. This agenda item is concluded. Thank you, Mr. Clark, Ms. Clark. Thank you, Ms. Sequin. And thank you, Jay.
Dean, just a quick note there. As you reduce this to writing, I'll be certainly happy to help the board fill in with some findings and conclusions along the lines of what the board members concluded during their deliberations.
Okay. Is the board comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay. And then do we present that document back to the board?
I think if it's faithful to this vote, and I'm not going to spend like multiple pages on it because I think the vote was pretty clear. I think if it's faithful to the decision and the board feels as such right here today, then just having you sign something that is short and sweet and captures what the final vote was, I think would be appropriate. But I defer to the board on that. If they want to see it again, certainly it could be presented at your next meeting.
What's the pleasure of the board? Okay. Thank you, Jay. I appreciate that offer. We'll proceed along those lines.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. You too.
You too.
Okay. Let's get this stuff off the table here. The next item is the consent agenda, and there are two items in particular. One is to consider the outdoor display and sale of goods on town property, Chatham Garden Club annual plant sale, June 6, 2026, at the Chatham Community Center at 702 Main Street. And second, to consider renewals of Select Board issued licenses for common victular, entertainment, automatic amusement, and movie theater, Class 1, 2, and 3 auto dealer, innkeepers, and lodging houses. And we can vote this in one fell swoop, but I'm going to remove one particular item. On the common victular Sunday dessert renewals, I'm going to remove the Chatham Penny Candy Store for separate consideration.
And sweet, I have two.
Oh, you have another one?
I have two, sorry.
Sweet Dreams Ice Cream and Candy.
thank you.
I forgot you were such an entrepreneur. Thank you. So with the balance of the consent calendar, is there a motion to approve that?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second that.
Moved and seconded. All right, I'll take a vote on that. Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, so that's 5-0. Okay, the separate items out were Chatham Penny Candy and short and, what is it? It's not short and sweet.
Sweet dreams.
Sweet dreams.
Sweet
Dreams.
Dreams, Sweet Dreams.
Motion to approve.
Come on, you got to stay with the advertising.
That's all right. Sweet Dreams Ice Cream and Candy, so
Motion to approve.
motion to approve. is
Second.
Moved and seconded. I will call the roll on that. Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, and Mr. Metters has recused. Thank you. That's 4-0-0 with a recusal. Next, public comments on the business agenda, and you can make them now or you can make them later on. Contemporaneously, I don't see any currently, so we'll proceed to the business agenda. First is a report on 0 and 1533 Main Street Housing Development from the Zoning Board of Appeals Chair Randy Potash. Welcome, Randy.
Thank you for having me. Hello, everybody. So I know you didn't invite me, I invited myself, and I acknowledge that I wanted to come give you a report on what we've done since May and how we came to the decision we did, and not just for the Select Board, also for the whole town of Chatham and anyone interested, because this is, in a sense, a historic project. So we received the project at the zoning board in the month of May, and from May until December of 2025, we had 8 meetings, and they took 24 hours of airtime. And I'd like to just take an opportunity to thank Katie Donovan, Sarah Clark, Chantel Kilkenny, Jay Briggs, Channel 8, because they made it all really tolerable for the town, you know, the people that came to all the meetings, and for us. So we had 24 hours of meetings and a lot of prep time. And we all started to prep for that last fall when we knew it was coming. We watched videos, we read materials, and we were ready, and it was an interesting process. No one knew what would happen until the vote. We obviously obeyed open meeting law the whole time, and I didn't know what the vote would be until it happened, I can say for sure. So there's 48 units in 9 buildings in 3 acres of land. They're all rentals, and so they take us from 4.8 to 611 for affordable housing. So what I wanted to point out were the things that we did over the last several months. We were presented with a certain layout, and I think we all knew that unless we had a really profound safety or welfare issue, that there would be really very little chance on appeal that any denial would prevail. So I know for myself, I took the approach of trying to make this the best project that we could for the town. And it took a while, because I also didn't feel bound by the streetscape that surrounds it right now. I looked at this, and I think most of us looked at this as the future of West Chatham. And there's a low bar right now on many of the properties around there, and they could be improved. And so we didn't feel as if we needed to set a low bar. We wanted to set standards high. So this is the HBDC, and now I know you know a lot about the HBDC, and we encourage Penrose to use the design rules of the HBDC, and we also took a lot of attention to the streetscape there. Those are very important. So we were able to do the following things. We were able to provide flourishing vegetation. That's what we hope we'll see, because they're going to put a well in. There was no plan for irrigation when they came in, none. The idea was that they would truck in bags for the first year maybe. So having a well there and having conditions really outline that they are going to need to keep it alive and pay a lot of attention to the vegetation. They are also going to put real trees versus little sticks that are sort of held by rope. They're going to put at least 4.5 caliber trees in all the very important areas. They weren't going to do that. They were going to buy whatever trees were available at the time, and there was no real plan. So I think those things are important. We also improved setbacks for the abutters, and we improved vegetation screening for one of the abutters in particular. We lowered building heights as close as possible to 30 feet. I don't have the statistics off the top of my head. We did that early on. We also have them comply with the HBDC sign rule. They came in with a whole different plan for that, and now their sign is going to look like all the other signs in the HBDC, size-wise, and the fact that they're only going to have one. Your RFP, interestingly enough, did not call for a management building, and it didn't call for a community area. It did not call for a gym. It didn't call for that building at all. However, it did call for a management agency, and you really wanted that. And I noticed that, and that's why another couple of other members wanted to take the building out totally, but I thought based on their argument and what the town was looking for, it was perfectly reasonable for them to have a management office. And they're putting that office front and center next to two large housing buildings, and it did not start off with what we have now. It started off with a very large building that did not look Chatham-esque in any way, shape, or form, and then they reduced it in size, and it looked a lot like a drive-through fast food restaurant, being quite frank with you. And we were able to persuade them to put what's going to be a cape, just a cape house, and it's going to look similar in design and colors and what looks like cedar shingles to the buildings that flank it. So it's going to look nice, and it's going to have real trees and irrigation in the front. We also, let's see, so they did take out the gym and the common area. As to parking, we all thought it was important, and we did get some input from Tracy, who is in charge of Chatham, I can't remember the name of yes, thank you. And she also agreed with many of us that there should be one assigned space per unit. And so we have 48 assigned spaces, and the rest will be for guests. They agreed to do that. Let's see. Siding was an important topic, as I mentioned. They're going to have traditional white classic cedar-looking shingles. They're made out of composite, but they look like real cedar shingles, and it's just more economic, and it's not going to fall apart, so that's helpful. And white clapboard. So the buildings are attractive. They're all attractive. The amenities are bike racks, grills in the common area, and the enclosures for their storage, so they don't have basements, is going to be large enough for at least one adult bike. Let's see. The common area in the center has trees, and they agreed to not clear cut. That was important to us. They're going to cut down the trees they need to, and they're going to replace them. So the dumpsters are on the sides near the rear, and they're screened quite nicely. So safety was a very important topic. We got some input from Chatham Chief of Police, and David Nixon was adamant about it. We all felt strongly that there should be a signalized crosswalk out front. As strongly as we felt about it, we knew that it's going to be up to the state, but Penrose agreed to advocate, and I know the chief of police will advocate. I'm quite sure that the town will. Plus, I guess the town got a pretty hefty grant to be included for this purpose. So it seems to really defy logic that the state won't put this crosswalk and signal in, but in Paul's words, if they don't, we will adapt, and it wasn't worth killing the project over. And I didn't think it was worth killing the project over either, but some people did, and some people stand by that. And one thing I want to note that I really am proud of is that we spent a lot of time with council at an open meeting going through this 17-page document that is the decision. And it didn't matter if some members were against it. They participated with a lot of enthusiasm because they knew they wanted to help make it the best project that we could. And they all had input, and everybody had a great attitude the whole entire time. And that's the culture of the zoning board, and that's what, that's probably also why, it took several months, because we tried to have due process for everyone in the town and for ourselves. Let's see, I think I pretty much covered what I wanted to cover. Also, the lighting lanterns that are the same from downtown. So it's going to be pretty nice looking. That's, at the end of the day. It's dense, that's what 40B is. It's dense, there's a lot of buildings on a small area, but we did the best we could. And I hope that even if you aren't happy about it, and this is to everybody in the town, at least know that we did our best, and this is why we came out with what we came out with.
Well, thank you, Randy. This was a first-time novel experience for the town, for your board. I didn't watch every minute of it, but I really applaud you as chair and all of your board members for how you conducted yourselves, the diligence that you undertook, the open process, the considerable input from the public and from the developer that was accepted, and the very thoughtful decision-making process that resulted from that. I read the decision, and I appreciate your highlighting the significant points. I just really had one question.
Yes.
Is it, should we assume that the developer is going to accept this, or are they going to appeal to the state? Do we know?
Oh, no, they're going to accept it.
They're going to accept it.
Oh,
Good.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
great.
We knew that. It was kind of, if you were at the meetings, the body language was really dramatic. We knew when they were happy, we knew when they weren't happy. There was a lot of head shaking. It was helpful. I felt that Penrose was very good to work with, and, we're not done with them yet. And,
I know.
And I might not be reporting the same news when we get done with Meeting House. I don't know. But, we know each other well now, and maybe it won't take as long. We have to close that public hearing by February 9th, just in
Okay.
case you're wondering.
Any comments from the board? Jeff?
Yeah, and I said this earlier on camera and in a live meeting of the select board, but the ZBA took a very thoughtful, diligent approach to this consideration of the 40B project at 1533. There was body language on the part of the ZBA as well, by the way. But you guys did a great job. I attended many of the meetings, and if I didn't attend, I watched them. And I read the entire conditions, the entire decision, if you will. And the project, I will state unequivocally, is a much better project for the ZBA's having been involved and its input.
That's all that counts.
Much better project. The issues of safety have been covered. I do agree with you, and I think ultimately, although maybe Chatham, West Chatham in particular, may not be MassDOT's favorite geographic location in the state of Massachusetts, I think they will be able to give us permission to do a crosswalk and signage there. But the overarching issue here isn't it's density, yeah, but we're providing 48 units of housing that we never had before that are desperately needed. And so that's what we have to keep in mind, what we accomplished together working with Penrose, and also what we need to keep in mind as we work together with Penrose on Meeting House. So you did a great job as the chair, thoughtful, very clear approach to participation and the organization of the meeting, which I really appreciated. I thought you did a great job, and I've said that again. This is the second time I've said that, and I thank you.
Thank you.
And I wish you well in Meeting House, and you'll see me at the meetings.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Randy.
Any other comments from board members? Shireen?
Randy, thank you for the presentation and the ZBA's diligence on this, being the first initial project of significance for the town in a very long time. When you were going through the RFP and the proposal together, was there something significant that you saw that we should be taking into consideration if we ever have another proposal? That, I mean, would you be willing, as a ZBA, to send that along to the Affordable Housing Committee as a recommendations, or just some thought, a thought piece or something that would maybe help us coalesce a little easier on the process of permitting?
I would enjoy that. I would be able to purge my brain of a lot of thoughts.
Okay, I appreciate that. As Jeff said, the big deal here is that 48 families are going to have a residency in the town of Chatham, and they're going to be part of our Chatham community, which is going to be a really good thing. And we just recently had a presentation by the superintendents of the schools in the Cape at a meeting we were at, Jeff and I, last Friday, where housing and enrollment of the schools and the success of our schools is tied to the idea of housing. And I think the superintendents couldn't drive that process home more to us, that we need housing. And we need to get through the process in a more streamlined manner. And I think that now that you have this, and I know that you made comments about Meeting House Road, but I think we also have to keep an eye that we are providing housing that's going to be a substantial addition and benefit to the town.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right. Thank you, Randy.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Anytime. Thank you. Next is the update on the watershed permit planning and sewer expansion efforts. We'll have a presentation by GHD.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, were you going to ask any comments from the public or questions?
I'm sorry, were there comments? Yeah, Carolyn, please come forward. Thank you, Shireen. I missed that.
Welcome.
No. Sorry
Thank you,
about
Dean,
that.
I appreciate that.
Didn't see you.
Carol McClellan, South Chatham. I just want to say I'm very excited that we're moving forward with these 48 units, but, and I know the ZBA did a lot of work and a lot of time, and a lot of effort. A lot of people in the community did put a lot of time and effort in prior to that for many, many years to get to this point. I have to say that I'm very disappointed in the aspect of how we quantify the value here. And as the chair just mentioned, that they already knew that they couldn't do anything about the density, and yet that was always a threat that they would go to appeal because of the density. And in exchange for that, they were able to concentrate the site and give the abutters more of a buffer zone, which was great for the abutters. I'm sure they liked that. But the sacrifice of that was the quality of, to some degree, the quality of life for the future residents. And I don't feel as though, I don't think there's equity in that. There's the communities, the flex space, which was in the RFP. It was requested. It's a flex space for 48 households to have a little bit of space for community activities. It's not a lot to ask. And yet that seemed to be too much. Even with the concentrated space, there was still room to have it, but for whatever reason, they don't want to have it. They can certainly speak to the architectural style. They had 180 days to tweak it in any way they wanted. It could have been that community building could have looked like a farmhouse, a boathouse, a lighthouse, whatever it was that the ZBA wanted them to draw, they could have done that. So that was a possibility. But I am disappointed about the equity between the future residents and the abutters and how we decide how that's going to play out. One of the abutters, the recent property owners next door, they've just finished their home. The developer has just finished developing that home, building that. It's a 4,500 square foot home, has a swimming pool, a patio. They've used all their property up to their line. They have a single arborvitae line between their property and our property. And good for them, that's fine, they get to do that. But we had to sacrifice another 9 feet along the entire southern and western border, which is about 5,000 square feet. That building, that home there, is 1,500 square feet larger than the Penrose building across from Mr. Levitt, which was perceived as being a monstrosity. And this is a private home. They're free to do that. I have no problem with them doing that. I have a problem with using different scales depending upon whether it's an affordable housing or a private development. So I'd like people to take that into consideration when they're looking at Meeting House and our other developments, that it's not always an exchange. Getting a better development doesn't mean being a benefit to the abutter at the sacrifice of the future occupants. Okay,
Thank you, Carolyn. Ms. Smith, did you have comments?
Hannah Smith, Chatham. I just wanted to thank the zoning board for all the time that they spent on Main Street and what they're spending on Meeting House right now as well. I want to keep this light because I think this is just about providing an update. But I did want to say, with respect to Carolyn, you did originally favor a proposal that was less units than the one that we're going through right now. So I don't really know. You know, everyone has had different ideas of density, this and that. At the end of the day, I think that having a process that's open like the zoning board process, it does provide a lot of valuable input. And I think that a lot of people, there's people that don't agree with the project that are happy to see how it finished. And I think that's kind of just where we should leave it at. But yeah, I'm happy with this. I believe this is the best that it probably could have turned out.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment in fairness to Carolyn and the comments about what she favored earlier, because I favored the same thing along with Corey Metters. That was an ownership concept, and I think that's what drove Carolyn. I can't speak for her, but I appreciate your comments. I appreciate Carolyn's comments as well. Thank you. Anybody else?
Mr. Chair, Stephen Buckley is online.
Stephen. Stephen, you're on.
Yes, okay, thank you. Yes, I'm glad. I'm currently at a public meeting in Bourne on the canal bridges, and I just spoke 1 minute ago, so it's funny how all of this seems to coalesce at the same time. Anyway, yes, I'm wanted to comment on, and I missed most of what Randy had to say, so I guess I'll watch that later, but it doesn't really change from what I wanted to say, which is that, yes, having sold the former Buckley property for exactly this purpose, I am certainly not a NIMBY in this respect, so that was the whole idea, was to provide as many housing units as possible in the most beneficial and valuable way, at the highest and best use of the property. And so, however, I tried to hang back and only concentrate in providing input on cosmetic things because I liked the generals. I liked, generally speaking, where things were going, and I didn't think I could do I didn't think it was worth weighing in on density or anything like that. So I'm not complaining about density at all. However, yeah, I did want to see something that looked like white cedar shingles, but not white. They're gray, but seasoned cedar shingles, because that is the predominant siding. So I was concentrating my comments on stuff that I thought was easy to nudge. However, towards the end, there was a proposal to take away a community room in the community room in the administration building. And so to me, I certainly had the idea that this would be, and I was hoping it was ownership involved, but it didn't go that way. But lacking that, I wanted there to be some, the community room seemed to me to be the heart of any kind of social gathering place where people who lived there could do more than just live there. They could be neighbors. They could be a small little community. They could be a real neighborhood. And that there would be a place where people who were perhaps in a one-bedroom apartment, couldn't entertain a bunch of people, but perhaps use the community room to have birthday parties, social gathering, clubs, whatever, wait for the bus to come, all kinds of things that could happen in a community room that they wouldn't be able to do because they don't, these buildings don't even have basements that you could go down. So there's no elbow room. That would be the place to go. And when I saw that it was because I think the process was compromised, I believe, because there was no vote on taking out the community room out of the administration bill. It came late in the process, and I think there should have been something where, so that people could go on the record, even the members who voted against the whole project have been making beneficial suggestions. So I'd like to see there be a vote when the design comes back in 60 days or 60 days from December 10th, and give that an honest up or down so people can say, yes, I think this would be better without a community room, that having a community room would be a negative. I want to hear that discussion. I want to see those votes. And then whatever happens, happens, as long as the process is not giving short shrift in that regard. So that's my suggestion. And according to the agreement, it appears that's possible because it doesn't say anything in the agreement about not having a community room. It just says it was unacceptable. So now that it's been decided, I believe that details like this won't sink it. It wouldn't have sunk it anyway, but now it's clear that community room or not, it won't, that the approval of everything won't hinge on whether that's not a danger or a risk to the whole project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen. Last call for comments on this agenda item. Okay. So now we will proceed to the watershed permitting and sewer expansion efforts, and we'll call on our Public Works Director, Rob Faley, to present the consultant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rob Faley, Director of Public Works. So this presentation is really a continuation of or follow-up of the presentation that GHD performed last, I think it was late spring, early summer. In addition to this and previous presentations to the Select Board and to the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee, we included neighborhood outreach meetings, public information sessions in South Chatham. We conducted 2 of those, one in May, one in September. So Jeff will present, a project update, which will include progress on the watershed permit, sewer expansion planning, phasing, and anticipated timelines, as well as what we had promised most of all was the preliminary cost estimates associated with the remainder of Phase 1. So Jeff, myself, or Greg Berman are available for questions afterwards, but with that, I'll leave it to Jeff Gregg from GHD.
Thank you very much. Jeff Gregg, GHD. So I'd like to, we'll do a little background that we had done before, talk about the planning, the grants that kind of helped facilitate these updates, the timeline that we're looking at, what we're looking at for compliance for the TMDLs, for the nitrogen TMDLs. That's the basis of all this work, the preliminary costs, and some of the schedules. So as everyone's aware, and we went over the last time, town filed a comprehensive plan back in 2009. It was approved. That basically called for the sewering of the town of Chatham. The plan was broken into 2 primary phases. Phase 1 being what's it going to take to get to the TMDLs, to achieve compliance with the TMDLs. And then Phase 2 was to serve the benefit of the town of providing sewers for the entire town. In 2018, Town of Chatham, as part of the Pleasant Bay Alliance, entered into the first watershed permit in Massachusetts. And then in 2023, the state promulgated their regs that were based on a lot of the work that was done through the Pleasant Bay Alliance permitting process. And they came up with some requirements, and one of those was to file a notice of intent to file a watershed permit back in 2024. So the town filed that, and with the intent of actually doing their actual permit filing in 2027. Move the cursor out of the way. This document that we've been working on as part of these grant efforts is not intended to replace the comprehensive plan. It's literally just an update of the water use, the costs, looking at the phasing, and making sure that we're still kind of working on the same pathway that we were before. And then moving forward, once you, in 2027, file for the actual watershed permit for the remainder of your watersheds, the permit cycle is every 5 years. And then you can make modifications as needed throughout the process, throughout the permit with approval from DEP. And one of the things that was actually clarified for me today in a discussion I had with DEP about this project was the goal is for towns to reach TMDL compliance in 20 years, or have a plan that can reach it in 20 years. So that's 100%, with the idea that you could, with DEP approval, get to 75%. So a lot of the presentation and our understanding before, which DEP also said was a clarification that a lot of people needed, is that the 75% isn't a guaranteed number, it's a fallback number. So they really want people going towards the 100%, which our plan does show, but there's a lot of discussion about in our document right now, the 75 and 100%. So as we talked before, the town had 2 grants, one in 2024, one in 2025, for just over $190,000 to basically continue Pleasant Bay Alliance support, file the notice of intent, provide this basically the outline for the permitting process, do these presentations, public outreach, and get a document which we have given to DEP for their initial comments on. This is the framework of what we're going to be doing in 2027 to present. And as we went through the last presentation, this map shows the town and all the various different phases. The area in red has been either designed or constructed, so has sewers available to it as of now, or is being finished up as part of the current construction projects are finishing up. And then the next area is the 1F1 project, which we presented on as well as Rob indicated. That is focusing on the Cedar Street neighborhood and some neighborhoods that are off of Main Street. And then what we did as part of this plan was look at the next subsequent phases and break those out, and we color-coded them. And as you can refer back to the previous presentation and all those little sort of sub-areas. And then as we talked about last time, we talked about the watershed timelines. And what we're really trying to do, and we discussed this with DEP as well, is it's in the best interest of the town to line up all your timelines. So if in this first column, this was what the Pleasant Bay Alliance permit original date was 2018, and then when they promulgated the regs to go to 5-year reporting periods, we were thinking that they were basically going to fall into this these 3 time periods. So when we started drafting our notice of intent, we were doing that same. We were trying to match up our South Coast Embayments proposed permit with that. Since that time, the Pleasant Bay Alliance and DEP are finalizing their updated permit for Pleasant Bay, and it'll likely come out in 2026. So presuming that it does come out in 2026, those 5-year reporting periods would be in these darker numbers, and because we are now proposing to file the a South Coast embayments permit in the end of 2027, so it would start in 2028. We kind of had to compress some of the reporting periods again to get in alignment. So that's basically what this is trying to demonstrate. It'll work well in the sense that the work that we've been doing now, the water use data is up through 2024, so it'll essentially be a 5-year update when we get to 2031 anyway. So it'll actually line up quite nicely with when you have to do updates for Pleasant Bay and your future South Coast embayments. I believe we presented this as well. We talked about the timeline, so we looked at existing and or kind of current conditions and then a future projection of a 20-year planning horizon. And for Pleasant Bay, we were looking at, based on where we would be in the various different phases, at what point we would reach either 75% or 100% compliance with the TMDLs based on those future load conditions. Obviously, if you don't get that growth, then you'll likely be hitting those periods earlier in the process. So that's what this table was basically representing, is that by the end of phase 1, you'll essentially, for all those watersheds, be at that compliance point under those future loads.
What years is that then, Jeff?
Oh, sorry.
What years are that then? So the 78% for Pleasant Bay, we're compliant with the TMDLs in Pleasant Bay, like, when?
Okay, so I would have to, I didn't have that on this table.
Yeah.
I have another table in the report.
But you think you're gonna get the 75% TMDL on the South Coast before we get Pleasant Bay?
Is it 2041? Yeah. Okay.
41, oh.
Did I have that on the other? Oh, on the other, oh, okay, sorry. Oh, yeah, so I can, yeah, so, and then 1N is 2047, so.
It's coming up.
And this is an aggregate of all those, some of the watersheds, because it's a very busy table when you start looking at each sub-embayment. You achieve certain compliance a lot earlier in some areas of town and less in other areas of town. So it takes longer. So this is for the Pleasant Bay system. You're getting there just before the end of phase 1, and for all the remaining South Coast embayments, which are Sulphur Springs, Bucks Creek, Taylor's Pond, Mill Creek, and Stage Harbor systems. Those are all your other South Coast embayments that you don't have a watershed permit for. So then the big thing is obviously the project cost. So we know this has been a very important issue. So some of the background on how the costs were developed. So when we did the comprehensive plan in 2009, when that was issued, those were based on a 2007 construction dollar. So we didn't project out when that would be. So all the dollars were based on 2007 dollars. So at that time, the estimate was for just the collection system, so taking the treatment plant out and not talking about phase 2, just for phase 1, it was estimated at about $170 million. So knowing that things obviously inflate over time, for the purposes of this discussion, what we did is a straight line analysis and said, okay, if that dollar value was inflated to 2047, which is the new projected end of our project, we'd be somewhere around $650 million for all those phases. And that's design, construction phase services, all the utilities, police, it's all those components. The only thing it doesn't include, because that was being sort of handled separately, was the grinder pumps, which I know there have been other discussions about that.
So if I might, just a quick question on that one. So 650 gets us to 2048 at 75% for both SCE and Pleasant Bay? We're done.
Yes, so that's,
I
yeah,
mean,
so that's that phase 1.
It's a total projection, I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
It's a big, it's a huge number, but.
Yeah, it is a
but
huge.
that gets it done forever and ever?
So that's based on the future, based on future growth and things. So if you don't get to that future growth, then you may, so the key of going through your permitting process is every 5 years, you can kind of check in on see how you're progressing.
Yeah.
And if you're not seeing that growth, because the town's plan is to sewer the entire town, then, and we're not proposing to change any of that, you may hit compliance earlier than those periods of time, but you'd still be carrying it through till, beyond 2047 to sewer the entire town.
Got it. But we could do better than that. I was gonna ask, what have we improved at all, TMDLs and anywhere in town? And anyway, and finish your deal, and I'll be quiet.
No, they're very good questions. So, so to date, the town has appropriated, now it's appropriated, not spent, but appropriated $135 million just on the collection system. So that's not including the treatment plant, and it doesn't include any of your, sorry, I gotta stop playing with the mouse here. The debt forgiveness, 0% financing, the connection fees with Harwich, any of that money that has come in for any of that stuff. So the 135 is just what you've appropriated, and that includes your most recent appropriation for $32 million. So when you take that and you take the 135 and you add in what our new projection is, which I'll show you in the next slide, and you take the approximately $500 million there, that gets you just to around the $630 million, which is pretty much in line with what a straight line projection of what you would have spent on, by 2047, or what that value of that money is in 2047. It's not complete apples to apples, but we figured that's the easiest way to kind of show that projection. What we did is when we were trying to do it by our various different areas, we looked at when we were estimating the midpoint of construction might be for each of those projects. We looked at what our current bid climate is, what we've been getting for bid for recent projects on the Cape. Obviously, we've been doing a lot of projects here, but there are a lot of other collection system projects that we're aware of as well. So we used those factors, and then we inflated using the ENR index each year to get us to those values. And then we didn't project the phase 2 costs just because there's so much uncertainty in the next 20 years. It wasn't worth the exercise. So on the right-hand side, the left-hand side, is all those various different phases, and they have my lovely, wonderful numbering system that basically phase 1 is basically TMDL compliance, and then all the letters are just basically all the sub-phases that we've been doing. So I'm sure people are fairly familiar with it, but that's the general gist of it. The phase, when I presented the 194, it takes out the money that's been associated with phase 1 F1, because that was appropriated as part of this funding last appropriation, and a portion of the phase 1 F2, because you were appropriating some of the money for design and other services for that as well. So that's why there's a difference between the 494 and the 518. And then we tried to give you a general period of time, roughly about 3 years, for that project from design through construction. Well, so the design period will kind of be larger, but the construction period is roughly a 3-year period. It could be shorter, could be longer, it just depends. So it was just easier to kind of pick a standard. We carried that through, and then, like I said, picked a midpoint to give you an estimate based on that. And we had to make a lot of assumptions. Do you get a pumping station? Is the pumping station in an area that's going to, require something a lot more elaborate, like what we had to build down at the Harbor Master's Garage, the Old Mill Boatyard? Or is it going to be something that's going to be a bit more smaller, straightforward, doesn't have to have all the other sort of conditions of being, that you have to deal with in a coastal community. So we tried to take some of those things into consideration. And we also know that, there's the possibility that you won't be able to secure all your pumping station sites. So the cost could come down as you adjust with whatever your collection system is to deal with that. So that's generally the gist of the costs. And then in terms of just closing out the presentation, I had prepared this presentation before I actually knew that I had a meeting today with DEP. So we met with, this upcoming meeting actually happened this afternoon. We had a very nice meeting with them, went over this. They gave us some recommendations and some things they'd be looking for. And then we asked for some input with regards to any additional studies or evaluations or things that they might be looking for, so that if the grant opportunity comes up again this summer, we can align our scope with what we're trying to do there. We're also meeting with the treatment facility, the operators, and DPW staff to talk about the treatment plant, because one of the other things that's not covered in the cost projection is when you might have to do the next phase of your treatment plant. Likely it's going to be closer to the 2047, but some of that will also depend on how close Harwich gets to their purchase flow value, their max value. And then we plan on, right now, the NOI basically says that by December 2027, the South Coast Embayments watershed permit will be applied for, and we're very far along in terms of the report to support that permit application. So the 2027 numbers seems like a good horizon for that. With that, I will take any questions that you might have.
Well, thank you very much, Jeff, for that presentation. I know you presented this to the Water and Sewer Committee a week or so ago. I just had one question regarding the next phase, as you referred to it, of the treatment plant. Are we talking there enlargement of the plant to accommodate the additions to the collection system? Is that what we're referring to?
So the meeting tomorrow is twofold. One, as the system is aging, so we want to talk with them about some improvements that need to be made, or just sort of rehabilitation that need to be made from when the facility was first put into operation. And then we also want to identify what the projection is and how we want to build out the site. If the plan was already, when we developed the plan and when we first constructed the site, we did a lot of the infrastructure to allow the expansion to add a ring at the Orbital. So a lot of the foundation and footing is actually there so that they wouldn't have to try to build all that. They just basically be building up the walls. And then we wanted to look at the flow projections to see how close we were going to be getting, at what point we reached the threshold with the state of 80%. So once you get to 80% of your design flows, then the state says you need to be doing an evaluation, and we're nowhere near that right now. So this is really more of a, okay, what things should we want to be talking about so that as we document the report for the watershed plan, we can outline those, and then we can kind of set where we think that expansion might need to be. Right now, it doesn't look like it needs to be any sooner than towards the end of phase one. So that's still a long ways out.
Who's the meeting tomorrow with?
It's with the operators and with DPW.
Oh, okay, thank you. Any comments or questions from the board?
I just want to get back to a question I had earlier. So if we went, are we making any progress in Oyster Pond or on Little or Big Pond, Little Mill or Big Mill Pond in terms of TMDL loading? Or we see any kind of positive results anywhere? Do we have data that supports our investment or not?
So the town's been collecting data on that, and we're also just had another part of, for the groundwater discharge permit, we had to do some additional analysis, so we should be getting a report on the, on that work that was done this past summer, fall, in the spring. And then, it really comes down to, when the town, wants to have discussions with SMAST or whoever to kind of give them maybe a summary report, because you've been collecting data, but I don't know if they're in line to, it's really a question for Greg on if they're in line for lining that up. That would help kind of show what that water quality has been doing over the years.
Yeah.
Great, and so, water quality has been collected for well over 20 years. All of that is available on the town website under DNR water quality. You can, our fancy new GIS system, you can click on the map and it will bring up the graph of dissolved oxygen and eutrophication index, so you can see how it's changed over time. If you'd like, I'd be happy to prepare a memo kind of describing Oyster Pond specifically. But, a lot of these areas, looking at the 10-year groundwater flow line, like even after we sewer, there's going to be kind of that lag. And, we are hoping and we're kind of seeing hints of improvement in some of the areas. But, we still have a bit of a wait to see the true improvement come.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Corey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm trying to jog my memory, because years ago, I remember attending a meeting in Orleans. Dr. Duncanson, I think Carol Ridley was there. And obviously Chatham was very well positioned in, in comparison to our other surrounding communities with our programs and wastewater planning and everything. And there was mention of, I want to say credits, like nitrogen loading credits. Is that still part of the conversation? Where does Chatham stand? Are people looking at Chatham? Are people looking at Chatham to ask for our credits? Like, where does that all stand?
So it's definitely a topic that's come up as part of the Pleasant Bay Alliance meetings, and with regards to, that's primarily where it would be tied to. I don't know that there's been any decision on that. I think that there's obviously been an understanding that Chatham has committed to going above and beyond a lot of the other communities with regards to the decisions that was made to sewer the entire town. Obviously, credits is a topic of interesting discussion for the communities, and there may be I think the opportunity really comes in is where it becomes more cost effective for the community that doesn't have the credits to give. It becomes more cost effective for them to buy nitrogen improvement from Chatham than it is for them to do it themselves. The complexity is that because not all of your water bodies are shared, all your sub-embayments are shared, it really comes down to the overall improvement to Pleasant Bay and what that influence is to the other communities that are in a different part of the watershed that only see the water from Pleasant Bay proper. So it wouldn't be like a true one-to-one, in my opinion. It would likely not be a true one-to-one, because yours might come up through Bassing Harbor or Riders Cove and then end at Pleasant Bay, and then somewhere north of that, in Orleans, Harwich, or Brewster, where that water goes into, it's going to be different, because it's obviously had it's diluted with all the other flow from the harbor. So it's definitely a complicated topic.
I recall from your, yeah.
So, but it does get discussed, and, it really does come down to then, how do you document it? It's certainly something that in Connecticut, they've done it for years with regards to what goes down to Long Island Sound relative to all the treatment plants that, are in there. And there are treatment plants that can buy credits from some of the other larger, municipal facilities, because it's more cost effective for them to pay another town than it is to, advance their treatment process.
All right, thank you.
Yep. Any other comments from the board?
I'm a pain, I have one more.
Yeah.
Do we have data from the Monomoy River, Muddy Creek, before we did the bridge and fixed the culvert? Do we have data from there?
That cleaned up very quickly, visibly, anyway.
Pleasant Bay gets such a flush, it's unbelievable. I can't believe we don't have market improvement in Pleasant Bay and in Riders Cove, Crow's Pond, Bassing Harbor, the Muddy Creek. It's just, and then, the reverse side is that when you go up into Little Pleasant Bay and up into the far reaches in Orleans, they've got a problem. The water turns green. I mean, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, so I mean, first part of the question is, we do have that data. I think that memo might be a good idea, that I can send that over, but, we do have the before and after the bridge installation at Muddy Creek, so we'll be able to share that with you.
That'd be great, yeah.
And one of the things that Jeff was talking to about the credit tradings, some of the problematic watersheds, like maybe the one you're talking about, we don't connect closely enough to be able to trade that credit. It's not across town, it's kind of by the particular watershed. I think if credits ever really do start coming into effect, every town is planning to handle it. But some of these things with the innovative nitrogen-reducing methods, be it shellfish, be it, those kind of things, like they require monitoring. And if that monitoring, shows it's not as effective as sewering, then they might need to, come knocking to Chatham to see if our sewering can help them in the short term.
Anybody else on the
Thank you.
panel? I see one public comment, it just says G. I don't know who that is.
It's Elaine Gibbs.
Oh, Elaine, welcome.
Yes, thank you. I hadn't planned on speaking. I didn't realize this was on it. I just want to go back to historically. I'm sure many of you remember back in 2009 when we approved this, the entire project was going to be 2 phases. 70% was going to be phase 1, 70% of the properties with the remaining by 2030, and then completion in 2040, and it was going to cost $300 million. About $35 million was going to the wastewater treatment plant. At the time, there were about 8,200 properties, and that included institutional, commercial, residential, industrial properties. That meant 5,000 properties were supposed to be connected to the sewer by 2030. We're now 2.5 years away from that. What I didn't hear tonight is how many properties are actually connected. We cannot make a difference in our water quality in the TDMLs unless the people connect. And right now, my understanding is, give or take 100 here or there, we were supposed to have 5,000 properties connected in phase 1 by 2030, and maybe 1,000 are. Some actually, because of when they were put in, have to be replaced. So it makes it sound like that we're getting there with the collection system, but until people connect, that's going to be the problem. And what has happened, and I have been concerned about this, now that number is up to $650 million for phase 1, I believe you said, versus $300 million for the whole thing when we approved it at town meeting. We've got to stop giving away our flow or redirecting our priorities. Everybody in this town has been paying for the sewer, whether or not they will ever be connected, for years, and our water rates continue to go up because of it. And we have basically sewered East Harwich because they didn't want to build a treatment facility, and this has been a real bone of contention. We redirected it there at the expense of people in Chatham that should have been connected, should have had the infrastructure put in. And so I would hope, and now we're getting to the point that the system at the treatment facility's gotten so old, it's going to need repairs. And so we got to start focusing on Chatham. We got to start talking about the number of people who have not connected and have to connect in order to, accomplish our mission. which is to reduce TDMLs. And I find this all really disturbing, that we're now talking 650 million versus the 300 million. We had all talked about doing alternative systems in neighborhoods to avoid this kind of expense. And we never did that. And so we're still doing a very invasive kind of thing. I mean, we are in the most fragile part of the state. And we dig 30-foot trenches to put in hardware. There has got to be a better way to do this that is not so invasive. And then when the pipes break and there's flooding and the sewer system doesn't work, you have tremendous problems. So I'm concerned with where this is going and where the timeline's being pushed out further and further, and our rates keep going up, and we're still nowhere near where we're supposed to be sewered by 2030, not even close. That's all I got. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elaine. I don't see any other comments. Jeff, did you have anything further to say? Well, thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you, Rob. We'll go on to our,
Thank you.
sorry you had to wait. Go on to our next item, which is to consider the recommendation of the Parks and Recreation Commission, amended town facility use fees for businesses operating on town property at the community center, beaches and parks as of January 1, 2026. This is continued from 11/18/2025. This is actually the third time this has been before us. So we'll call on Amy Howell, our deputy director for Parks.
Deputy Director, Community
Beaches,
Services.
Full title, what is it, what is the full title?
Community Services Deputy Director, Recreation and Beaches.
Okay, thank you.
I'll do a quick recap. So at the September 15th Park and Rec Commission, they voted and recommended to the Select Board to grandfather all current businesses operating on town property to the old fee structure. That recommendation was then taken. It was forwarded to legal counsel, who informed us that that presented legal and liability issues with the town, and basically said that all businesses should have an equal fee structure across the board. So that was presented at the November 18th Select Board meeting. And with that new information being presented at the November 18th Select Board meeting, you guys voted to send it back down to the Rec Commission to discuss because of legal counsel's opinion. So after internal meeting with town staff, Park and Rec Commission Chair, and Select Board members, we then presented at the December 8th Park and Rec Commission legal counsel's opinion, and the Select Board's send back to them. So after receiving again business operators' input, the public's input, the recommendation from the Park and Rec Commission before you guys today is to update the fee structure to a 12% fee of revenue collected for all businesses operating on town property. And that is what's in front of you right now.
So, so it's 12%, but your recommendation was what, originally 20%?
The recommendation was originally 20%. So the Park and Rec Commission felt, again, after listening to the business instructors' input, public input, their feedback, they felt that this was a fair compromise, for the businesses while also achieving our original goal when we started this process, which was to obviously make sure that the town was covered legally and liability-wise, and to bring all businesses operating on town property to an equal standing. And so the Park and Rec Commission felt that the 12% not only accomplished that goal, but also compromised with, public input.
What about the folks that the department engages to conduct programs at the center? Are they going to be 12%, or are they going up to 20%?
So it ranges anywhere from 15 to 20%, depending on what the cost of the program is, because we're not going to put, 12, 25 to make it exactly a 20%. So that is the industry standard that has always come. As we discussed at the Park and Rec Commission, it can be argued that because they're getting promotion, we're handling registration, all of those type of things that the businesses are not, that would kind of offset and why the percentage is a little bit higher. So
What are they at now?
it depends on the program, so.
But they're all going up. Are they all going up?
You're talking about
The ones that you engage?
the ones we engage. No, they're not going up. No, so those have been consistent. So for example, our fitness class and our yoga, so that's $12 per class. The instructor gets $10, we get $2. So that's technically 83% that the instructor is coming. So again, it really just kind of, it fluctuates between 15 to 20% depending on what the class is and what the price is of the program.
But there's no increase in theirs.
Nope, there's no increase in theirs.
What about?
They've always been between that 15 and 20%, so there was no need to increase theirs.
Well, I'm just wondering what incentive there might be if you're only proposing, and I realize it's coming from the commission, not you personally. If the increase is only two percentage points on those that are not engaged by the town, might there not be an incentive for those that are engaged by the town to go out on their own?
Yeah, for sure. It's also important to note that not everyone was at that 10% fee structure. So for some businesses, it's a much larger increase for them. And for some, it's just to 2%.
How many businesses are we talking about that are going to be affected by this?
Currently 4.
4.
So two of the 4 operated under a 10% revenue collected. And then the other 2 was a flat rate of $150 max per month.
And the commission is proposing that all 4 now go to a per person.
Yes,
At
so all
12%.
businesses operating on town property would fall under, they would have to enter into a license agreement with the town and all fall under the 12% fee structure. And again, that was, backed up by town council saying that all businesses should be
Yes.
charged the same fee structure.
What about our surrounding towns? The town of Harwich, I understand, charges both a flat fee and 20%.
They do, yeah, so at the Harwich, so they charge 10% along with a flat fee. So I think that's played a part into the Park and Rec Commission's 12%, so that we didn't have to get into semantics, trying to keep it as simple as possible to sitting at 12% instead of including a flat rate per use. So again, they felt that 12% kind of was a fair compromise comparatively.
Yeah, I guess compromise is in the eyes of the beholder. To me, I almost feel like, and no disrespect to you, you're just carrying out your responsibilities as the director, but, and I appreciate the efforts of the Park and Rec Commission, but I almost feel like we're wasting our time here in 3 separate sessions, and if all we're getting is 2%, I think the compromise could have been at 15%. But that's just how I feel right now. Mr. Matters, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me just try to put some background that may not have been totally covered. So, yeah, we've been back and forth on this. We met internally. The percentage was going to be 20% that was going to take effect January of next year. And we discussed, we compared Harwich's, 10% plus a flat rate. How do we come up with a fair, uniform percentage for all the programs? Internally, we came with 15% only because essentially the in-house, we're getting charged 20%. And at 15%, is that 5% difference going to be a deterrent to, for how the in-house resources, advertising, support, whatever, where independent would be paying 15? Park and Rec reduced that from 15 to 12, and that's what we're being presented tonight. But rolling back to the in-house, if we're gonna roll outside vendors at 12%, we probably should have a conversation to take an in-house and rolling them down, because a 12 and a 20% gap is significant. And you're gonna have people that are in-house probably saying, we don't want that, and all that little extra help isn't really maybe worth it per se to roll down. The really tricky part of this conversation is now, because we are working with trying to figure out a fair, equitable program, legally we're bound to, this has opened up a whole discussion, is we have, how to prioritize, how to acknowledge those entities that have been around for quite some time, give them the respect from their longstanding uses of the property, but understanding that we have in-house and out-house vendors, that at some point there could be a clash of prioritizing time, location, space utilization. So that is something that I think, staff has, navigated quite well to this point. It is very difficult, as more people get interested in certain spaces or time slots. And then we had the bigger discussion about, in facility inside rooms or outside spaces, because we have to treat them kind of the same, but it's difficult because some of the spaces are more, unique. There's certain limited opportunities to have courses on these locations. And then, there's a whole can of worms you start opening up if you have a certain location and there's more interest in it, we'll say, because there has been, you can clarify how much, but I think there's some growing interest in certain spots, locations, time spots. Are we looking at a different type of program? Are we looking for an RFP process? So this is really starting to open up a whole broader conversation. So we're trying to navigate it as best as possible, but I do think we need to keep a lot of the facts in place, because I'll be honest with you, the 12 and 15%, I don't care which way we go, it's not really that much monetary, but we've got to come up with a program that deals with more equity. We really do, because I'm worried if we do support the 12%, that we really need to go look at the in-house and what, where that gap falls at that point, because, if we support 12 and then we do in-house more like 15 or 16, I can support that, but if we do 12 and leave it in-house at 20, I see a problem, so.
I'm just going to ask in follow-up before others speak, how much additional revenue is this going to bring into the town, do we know?
I don't have that number. I don't know, not off the top of my head.
Because it's really dependent on how many people participate in these programs.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's why I know that the select board had asked, difference between flat rate and percentage, and we really focused on the percentage because we just felt that allowed it to be more footprint based. So obviously a smaller program is gonna have less of a footprint on any recreational facility in the town, where a larger program is gonna have a larger footprint on that recreational facility. And then in addition to that, it also, obviously our whole goal too is to offer community services. And the percentage rate allows us, if we have a business, whether it's a business or even one of our, in-house ones, if they have 5 participants in their program and they're paying a base rate, those 5 participants might not even cover that base rate for that day. But if they only have to pay a percentage of those 5, it makes it much more attainable for businesses and for our programs to operate on small class numbers. Otherwise you're always basing, a program or a class off of, you have to get to a certain number to even just break even off of that flat rate. So it's really why we've focused on the percentage fee as opposed to the flat rate fee.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the percentage concept. It's just 2 percentage points is trivial to me. Any other comments from board members?
You may not want to hear from me.
Mr. Dyken.
I just think we're way overthinking this, and maybe I missed a whole part of the conversation, but a lot of the emails that came in for the beach yoga was amazing. We got inundated with emails in support of no increase for beach yoga. And then, charging a flat fee for the use of a room to run an exercise class, that's a service that person's doing for our community. So, do we really need the, I mean, I'm not so sure we need the incremental revenue, and I'm lost on this one, to be honest with you. I think we're really overthinking it. I would take what we do now and multiply it by the CPI every year or something if you're looking for a few more bucks to offset the expenses of our facilities, but just really think we're overthinking it. Anyway, those are my thoughts. 12% is better than 20%, but I don't like the percentage model, to be honest with you. I don't like it. If you're using a room, pay us $25. Next year, pay us $26.50. Next year, pay us $28.50. Whatever. I mean, I don't know. Those are my minimal thoughts. I'm sorry, but I just can't get my mind wrapped around this one. This is hours we spent on this.
Yeah, I
Shereen?
agree, Jeff. And, I always go back to, especially for like the outside facility, the yoga, beach yoga stuff is, what do we charge for landings for for a boat to do a charter off of a landing, and what are our expectations from that? It's liability and it's a fee. I'm not sure what that fee is. I asked, and I'm not sure I've gotten that answer yet as to what that fee is. I just don't remember. But I think it's a comparable sort of concept to do that. As far as the smaller classroom in-house, I agree with Jeff. There's people that are doing community services for us, and when this is health and wellness and quality of life for the community, I think that the 2% is trivial, and I'm kind of like, this is, I don't even know why we're doing it, honestly.
Thank you. I just would note that, yes, we did get multiple emails. The staff computed them at 26. I thought it was closer to 50. Many of those, if not a majority of them, were from people who don't live in the town of Chatham. We're subsidizing quality of life, I guess. We're subsidizing the business community. We do a
Absolutely.
lot for the business community.
Yes,
We
we
give
do.
free parking to the business community.
Well,
I don't
we're gonna
want
fix
to hear,
that, though.
I don't want to hear that we're not doing enough for the business community. We're doing a lot.
I didn't say we
Oh,
weren't
I
doing
know you're
enough. I'm just pointing it out,
No.
that this is health and wellness.
But that's an argument. I understand that, Shereen. Stuart?
Sure. I'm not going to complicate this, I hope, any further. But are there any other fees, like the waterways? Those are all flat rates. There's no percentage. I'm trying to think, are there other fees that we use a percentage as opposed to a flat rate? That I don't
think of one, to
not-
be honest with you.
not
No, I
that
can't think of any.
And I just think that.
The leases for the fish pier, packing houses, it's a straight monthly
Set.
fee set for the year. Yep.
Right. So I don't know why we'd be doing it differently here. It seems to me a flat rate would be easier for the public to kind of understand. I don't know how much money we're making or what we were making compared to what we will be making.
I don't think it's going to be very much,
I
Stuart.
think the
No.
optics on that are pretty
No,
bad.
and
I
it, so,
don't know why the Park and Recreation Commission is wasting our time with this for 2%.
well, I would suggest, well, is there a particular am I missing something on the flat rate? Do you have a thought on whether?
So this all stemmed from over a year ago. So essentially it stemmed from Wicked Wavy, if you guys remember, coming in and wanting to do swim lessons on town property. So we went to town council. They suggested, because they're operating a business on town property, that we should be entering into a license agreement with the town. So that all went through. It was a 20%, which was approved by the Park and Rec Commission and the Select Board. So after that happened, with town council's opinion about how businesses operating on town property should be entering into these licenses, we, as a internal staff, along with the town manager's office, looked at what our current businesses operating on town property policy and fee structure was, and realized that there was no standard across the board. One business was paying this, one business was paying that, and it really was no rhyme or reason because they're outdated policies, outdated fees. So we collected data from, all the other towns, presented it to the Park Rec Commission and to you guys, and essentially, again, because legal counsel, stated two things. A, we need to be entering into license agreements with anyone operating on town property, and B, that the fee structures all needed to be the same across the board.
So when you, I haven't seen the legal opinion, but when you say legal counsel, we have to charge all across the board the same. So if a business is using, I don't know, the building for something, we should be charging the same for business using, as an example, the beach. Is that what they were?
So conducting a recreational program on town property, so.
Yeah, see-
So recreational business, I guess, is the correct term.
Yeah, I guess I don't, I haven't seen the opinion, but I'm not sure there's a disconnect there, or I just don't agree with it. Seems to me that if you're using a town building, you're using a lot more resources, and we're incurring more liability than somebody doing something on the beach. So I don't know if I've added any clarity to this, other than I would support a flat rate as opposed to a percentage, because how do you even determine what are you taking, how do you know, do you audit these people's books? I mean, how does that work?
They self-report.
They self-report, yeah.
Oh, okay, well, then I'd be even more so for the flat rate, because it would save a whole lot of time on, we did this at the Fish Pier a long time ago, and we ended up getting out of it, the 25 cents a box. We had no way of knowing whether we were getting, you're just
We had
assuming you're
fish
getting.
buyers self-reporting. I'm pretty sure they didn't do that.
So, anyway, I would support a flat rate, because I think the rest of our fees are structured that way, but that's where I'm at.
I would just mention that the taxpayers pay for the maintenance of the beach. The taxpayers pay for the parking spaces, the maintenance of that. It's not nothing. I'm not saying you're.
Yeah, I agree.
I understand your distinction.
Yeah, it would be less, I assume, yeah,
It's not,
I
it's
agree.
not completely.
I have
free.
another
Shireen,
question.
And then Corey. Shireen and then Corey.
Yeah, sorry. Are we requiring liability insurance on?
Yes,
on all?
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Corey, and then.
I think we need to tread carefully, because the percentage, 12%, 15%, really doesn't make a huge heck of a lot of difference. But what we're doing is we're starting to put a lot of light on these programs, that we want to support all the small businesses, support all the individuals who are willing to provide a service for the community, but also we're going to start putting, I'm concerned we're going to open up the door for more competition that's going to put us in a very awkward position, because you have outdoor spaces that are very unique, and have certain either location distinctions, time slot distinctions, and if we put a flat rate on them,
Wouldn't we RFP that? I mean,
that's exactly where I'm going.
Right.
I don't think that is necessarily the best path, because that does not guarantee someone who's been in business for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, it does not grandfather them. It
Well,
opens up, it gives.
I get that.
It gets that, so, but that is where I'm just putting it out there. If that's the direction you want to go in for some of these locations, then we have to have that conversation. I'm not, looking to go in that direction, but that is where I'm thinking that as more locations become more, if we put a flat rate of X, and then, 3 or 4 people say, hey, I want to run that same place, then again, we're going to competition, interest in the same location, same time slot, whatever. We're opening up a whole other conversation, and, the results may not be where we want to end up. I'm just putting caution in the wind a little bit.
I mean, the RFP process.
Hi, it's Meredith Fry.
And
I'm
wait,
on the
wait,
phone.
Meredith, wait a minute, please. I'll recognize you in a minute. Stuart had something you wanted to add.
I mean, the RFP should be able to address those types of concerns, because, you're right, that we would be able to take people's background experience and tenure here as a consideration in awarding those type. I think we've done that in the past, so, but I see it as, you'd have to address that, yeah.
Okay, so there are 2 on screen. Leah's had her name, her hand up for a while, but I will recognize the chair of the Parks and Rec Commission, Meredith Fry, first, and then we'll go to Leah Lacrosse, the Director of Community Services. Meredith?
Hi, we've been going back and forth with this Meredith Fry, Chair of Parks and Rec. I don't agree with a flat fee for many reasons. For example, if you only had 3 people show up for a class and you're paying for a room, you might be paying more for the room that the people are participating. And also, these instructors, we have put no regulation on how much they can charge. So, you know, Lighthouse Beach Yoga is charging $20 a person right now. So that's why a percentage works when they self-report. And we did originally talk about 15%. So after our last meeting, we had gone back and forth with the public and revisited, and we said 12% for 2 years, and then we were going to go back and look at it. We are just trying to do, because we were charging 20% to Wicked Wavy, and as Amy said, we are just trying to do a percentage across the board to be fair to everyone. And we're not telling these instructors how much they can charge. They can charge whatever they want.
Okay. Thank you, Meredith. Leah?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess Meredith made my point. I think but 2 points. The reason we did a percentage instead of a flat rate was because of that very reason. If someone, you know, Lighthouse Beach Yoga, if it's raining and she has 2 people show up instead of, you know, 20 people show up, the percentage is more fair than it would be if she paid a flat rate. And also, there is, you know, the whole point of this, whether it's 12%, 15, or 20, is that legal counsel has recommended that we are consistent across the board. And that's the whole point of this, is that we're trying to even the playing field for everybody and protect the town while supporting small businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any other public comments? Yes, Shireen.
In the argument of the flat fee, just to take into consideration, everybody's thinking in terms of flat fee per day. But if it was a flat fee per month or a lease agreement for some time, as a business, you're going to average out what your, what your costs of doing your business are versus a day-to-day accountability. That was, for me, would justify a flat fee a little easier if it was a monthly fee versus a daily.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, Jennifer Fettig, Chatham Lighthouse Beach Yoga. My current arrangement is that for the season, I pay $1,200 minimum or 10%, whichever is greater. So if we wanted to go to a flat rate, I would just encourage you to consider the $1,200 because it's already been established as considered fair by the Park and Recreation Commission. And I just wanted to say that in terms of the number of emails that were sent that were potentially from people who don't live in Chatham, is just to demonstrate how many people come from out of town to participate and then spend time in town, going to other businesses. And
I appreciate that. That's the
Yeah.
point that they made in their
Yeah.
emails.
Yeah.
Let me, did you have more? Because I wanted to ask you a question.
No, you can ask a question, please.
Are you okay with the 12% proposal
Yes.
for this coming forward? So
Yeah,
you
I
would
think
no
it's-
longer have to pay a flat fee, you would just pay the 12%.
Right. I'm $1,200 or 10%,
Right.
whichever is
Right,
greater.
right, okay.
So
thank you.
12 would be great. I mean, I think that if the goal is to just create consistency, and if the difference between 15 and 20 is negligible, or 15 and 12, then the difference between 12 and 10 is even more negligible.
It is
And
to
if we're
me,
not
it is
trying
to me, it is to me, yeah.
It is to you?
No, I'm saying the difference between 10 and 12 it isn't more significant than the difference between 12 and 15, as you just pointed out. They're both kind of
Yeah.
negligible
Right, they're both
differences.
kind of negligible. And, if we're not trying to balance the town's budget on the back of
No,
business people who are using community property, or just, if you were just looking for an even playing field, we keep going back and forth.
Okay.
I just encourage you to
Thank you.
consider staying at 10.
Thank you for your comments.
you
Any
very
other
much.
comments from the public? All right, I'll bring it back to the board. Who? I'm sorry, Brian.
Brian Phillips, 374 Orleans Road. Sorry, I don't want to waste too much more of your time on this topic. Just a couple things, I want to say. I was at the meeting at the Park and Recs, and then that whole little room was filled with people in support of, lowering the fees or keeping them the same, lowering them what you guys had voted for. Something I want to say about yoga teachers. I mean, for lack of a better word, they're soldiers of peace, love, healing, and goodwill. And they really need to be promoted. Yoga is really expensive. $20 for our class is a good deal. I mean, and you can do drop-ins there. I mean, a lot of times you had to sign up for, like a whole, like a 6-week session or whatever, and it's like $500, $600, $1,000, up front. So, I mean, that's a really good deal. She's providing good, great service. And then being a trainer, it's really hard. It's a lot harder than people think it is. You need to, know the medical history of each person in your class or that you're training. What past injuries they had, how that affects what you can do with them, what kind of, medications they're on, blood pressure, cholesterol, that affects things. And there's always, continued education is needed in all these fields, and that's at the expense of the, the instructors. Again, provides a valuable service, micro and macro, for a healthier, happier Chatham. And as a whole, as a society, we are, we're out of shape. Obesity is a problem. Our diets are terrible, and that's all things that these people help out with. And then on the other, kind of aspect of looking at what the alternatives is to this kind of thing is, would be employing, the town employing instructors for these classes. And how much more expensive would that be? You got to give them, the salary, the health insurance, the retirement fund, all that stuff. And then the thing is, it's like, kind of, treat people how you'd want to be treated. Is the Park and Rec's willing to take a cut to kind of, pay cut to balance out the budget? If so, then, maybe we should go forward with this. And then, because the reason why there aren't more, trainers and instructors, because it's very difficult to make a living doing that, and the fact that she has so many, these people have so many clients in their classes is really telling. And as far as how much they, can charge, to me, that's, the free market's determining that. It's like a basic elasticity. If you charge too much, there's going to be, less people in the classes. So I think, it's, up to them to kind of find, a balance. Because if they charge too much, these people aren't going to come to the classes. So I think, that, the initial 10% or the flat fee or whatever they were comfortable with before, should be implemented. I would say even less, 5%, promote it. It's really, they're providing a service for this community. I'll stop wasting your time. I think you guys get how I feel. Thank you.
Thank you. Corey?
Well, I'm a numbers guy and visual guy, so I'm just, you can tell me if I'm completely off base, but outside class, probably $20 a head is what is a potential charge. It could be higher, it could be lower, but I'm just throwing this for argument's sake. $20 a person, average class of 25. Complete season, 90 days. Is that high? Maybe, maybe not. So it was,
What do you average, Jennifer? Is that what you're saying? 85, okay.
okay, well, so the numbers I just wrote down, for $20 a head, 25-person class, 90-day session, that's $45,000. At 10%, that's a $4,500 payment. At 12%, that's a $5,400 payment, so it's an additional $900. And at 15%, it jumps up to $6,750. So, these are not numbers that are going to, solve our budgetary problems or issue. It's not about money. It should not be about money. It's, so.
No, but the point you made earlier about equity as between what we're going to charge the independent contractors versus those that we sponsor within the building, taking a look at that relationship, I think is well taken.
Yeah, if we support 12%, I think we got to relook at that in-house, because if I was an in-house instructor being charged 20% and I go independent for 8% on a smaller class, a couple bucks more in my pocket may be worth it to me, so and that's the reality of it.
I see, Leah, still have your hand up. Did you want to speak a second time?
I'm sorry, Dean, I don't know why it didn't go down, but I will take my hand down. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. I don't
So,
see,
Mr. Chair, so these are annual licenses. However the board votes, if you want us to come back next year at this time, we can look into it as well. Funds all go into the general fund that helps offset the tax rate. And if we need to look at our offerings to incentivize someone to offer a program in the community center, we can certainly look to that.
But
Amy,
it has to be a level playing field. I mean, I keep going back to the town council saying you gotta be the same. Well, the beach is different than a room in the community center.
but he was responding to the initial notion that of grandfathering.
She's a case manager.
Grandfathering.
Your mic is live.
I think the big difference was, you can't charge a higher rate if basically the staff time required to monitor that program has any difference, you know? If you, more staff time to monitor a program, then obviously a different rate structure. But if you can't justify a different staff allotment of resources, then you can't charge a higher rate.
Yeah, but he was responding to the initial proposal from the Parks and Rec Commission that that people that were already on board be grandfathered at the old rate. That's what he was responding to.
Correct.
Amy, the other three, we heard from one of the contractors, Jennifer, I'm sorry, I can't remember your last name. The other three, are they okay with the 12%? Do we know?
So two have just chosen not to give an opinion one way or the other. The other one is Susan Hunter. She's here. I don't know if she wants to speak. That's up to her.
You're okay with the 12%? Okay. All right, I'm going to bring it back to the board. Hopefully someone will offer a motion and
I'll offer a motion
we can dispense with this.
because this is too painful. I'll offer a motion. Staff has made a recommendation here to amend the town's facility use fee schedule for any business, class, or program operated by a private entity on town property at the community center, beaches, parks, to collect 12% of all revenue starting January 1, 2026, to be submitted as outlined in the license agreement, and request a review of the facility use fee scheduled by the Parks and Rec Commission and staff in 2 years.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All right, I'll call the roll. Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you, it's done.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you very much. Okay, the last item is to consider the date and time of the 2026 annual town meeting. We have to do this by December 31st, and I'm going to turn to the town manager, and I don't know if the town moderator is online, but he might be.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. There's a staff report in your packet that outlines the bylaw as well as suggested dates, taking into account when Mother's Day is, and for the annual town election to happen 4 days following the annual town meeting. Kathy today had sent you an updated listing of availability based on our audio contractors, when they're available. And I'll just address that first. They're at this time not available on May 4th, and that's Monday, May 4th, and then Saturday, May 16th is still, they're not available now, but they might become available. I did have an email correspondence with the town moderator. His preferences would be for Saturday, May 2nd at 1 p.m., and then any carryover could occur on Sunday, May 3rd. However, we didn't check availability on a Sunday with the audio contractors as well as the CART people who do the translation services for us. And then the other date he had suggested would be Saturday, May 9th, with a carryover, if we need a second date, to Monday, May 11th.
That's the Mother's Day weekend, right?
Yeah.
Mother's Day is May 10th.
Mr. Chair, we heard loud and clear from the community that that was a really bad weekend. It was Spring Fling, it was Mother's Day weekend. Our merchants weren't happy that they couldn't be represented at town meeting.
Right.
So I would say the 9th is a no.
What do other members feel? The town monitor is recommending 1 o'clock. Didn't we start the last one at 11 o'clock
We did.
in the morning? Because we just don't really know how many.
Earlier.
We don't know how many articles we're going to have, and he's pretty good at ramming them through and getting it done in one day.
I prefer 11 o'clock.
Yeah,
mean,
I kind of think so, too.
And
if
I'm
it can-
fine with the 2nd, if that's.
I was thinking even earlier than 11, but up to you.
What's the earliest we could, I mean, could we start at 9?
Yeah, I was thinking 9 or 10 would be.
I think 9. I don't know if Mark, if you want to, Mark Van Bork, just want to confirm with you how much time you need with the audio vendors to set up. But I think 9 should be fine, but let's hear from him.
Oh, stop, you can give it up.
6 a.m.
I'm sorry, what's the question again?
How, on a Saturday annual town meeting, what's the earliest you think that we could start? We're contemplating 9 a.m. Last time it was at 11 a.m.
We'd need to get in the day before,
Okay,
so we could start as early as you wanted on Saturday, as long as we have access the day before.
okay.
Do you need to get in the day before if it were 1 o'clock?
We'd like to. I
Okay.
think we probably could do 1 o'clock. I'd have to check with the vendor. But we probably
Typically-
could.
But your preference is to come in the day before?
My preference is to not do a Saturday, please.
I lost that battle a long time ago. I'd rather go back to Monday nights, but I don't
Well,
think I have support.
I'm a support, I would prefer Monday. No matter what we pick, we're gonna, we're gonna upset somebody. Everyone has strong opinion. It's 50-50. I do think Monday actually is a better choice, but it's one of those, one half dozen the others, so. I mean, I actually prefer Mondays, but you're gonna,
It's the issue on the warrant that's going to bring out the crowds.
Exactly.
Whatever day or time it is. But anyway, anyone else have any thoughts about this, what we'd like to do? Stuart?
You know, I always like the Mondays and evenings, but, I looked at the numbers. Since we went to Saturdays, and the participation rate is up slightly, but not huge. So I'm not sure, I think Saturdays were kind of an experiment maybe to see if we could get more people there, I assume.
I think we wanted younger people. I think that was a sense too, but then
Yeah.
it conflicted with.
Saturdays, you got.
Saturdays is a tough day.
Sports starts kicking in, people
Yeah.
are working. There's no perfect answer. That's the reality of it, so.
I mean,
There isn't, because, Saturday's a day off for some people, and, I'm fine with going with whatever, just,
I am too.
No, I mean-
I would go Monday.
there's no perfect science in
When I
this.
was working, Mondays were tough, but
They are tough,
you're at night, it's night,
yeah, yeah.
So Monday of
Saturday's
May
your
11th?
weekend.
Monday, May 11th is the day after Mother's Day.
Good with me.
Good with me.
Does someone want to offer a motion and the time?
Oh boy, I'll make a motion that we, the annual town meeting, start at, guess we didn't chat about that, but start at 6 PM on Monday, May 11th, 2026.
Second.
And the motion should include at the Monomoy Regional Middle
I'm sorry,
School.
at the Monomoy Regional School on Kroll Road.
Is the moderator going to have any angst about this? Do we know?
All right, let me check my email, I don't think so.
If he does, we could always modify this next week.
It was part of his second option. He had said, Monday, May 11th, if necessary, could also work as what.
Oh, okay.
It's followed by a Monday, May 11th, yeah.
Okay, good. So the motion is from Monday, May 11th at 6 o'clock PM.
Yes.
And there was a second, I think.
Yes.
Shereen second.
Yep.
Okay, we'll call a roll. Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Metters, I'm sorry, Mr. Dykens?
Aye.
Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Okay, thank you
Final
very much.
motion of the night.
A motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Dykens?
Aye.
Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you. Good night, Chatham.